Hello. Welcome everybody to episode number 8. Guys, we have done this for 8 weeks. That's 2 months of content of reacting to every single Alex O'Connor video on the internet. Give this video a like, and if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Guys, how are we doing today? Welcome everybody to the live stream, the official live stream discussing Alex O'Connor, as well as just religion, faith, topics of truth and tradition. And I'm just excited to get into this one because today we're watching the very first, the number one, you know, that little like number sign in front of the whole podcast thing. You know, Alex O'Connor has done so many podcasts, and now we are reacting to the first one, the primeval one, which is about Islam. We're talking about Islam, so we're going to be reacting to this video right over here. Armin, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but Armin Navabi and his experience with Islam. So it will probably be a bit about deconstruction, things of that sort, but it is very exciting. How are we doing today? Drop me the emoji. What's the emoji of today? The emoji for me is probably a little bit sad, if I'm being honest. I gotta be real. Seasonal, just I don't even want to call it seasonal depression, but seasonal like just sadness from it being dark is crazy. It's crazy real. Let me know. Do you agree? What is the thing that bugs you? At least here in the U.S. where I live, where things are just so annoying when it gets like just dark and you have to adapt to the fact that, you know, you're waking up and it's pitch black outside, and then you're going to, you know, getting home from work and it's pitch black outside. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, today we are reacting to this video right over here. Enlightenment, Hell, and Leaving Islam. The Cosmic Skeptic Podcast, numero uno. So yeah, drop that like. Let me know what is the emoji for today. For me, it would have to be just a moon. You know, the fact that, you know, it's just getting dark these days. It's all right. I can take it. You know, I'm a big man. I'm a grown up, but you know, sometimes I just want to cry. I used to be in swim team when I was in high school, and I'd have to get to school at around like 5 a.m. And then we do our swim practice. And then after that, I had marching band after school. So I had to do marching band after school. And so by the time I left for school, it was dark. And by the time I got home, guess what? It was also dark. It was just crazy. Oh man. But yes. Oh, we got a chat here. My autumn disorders are flaring up. I'm in pain and super nauseous. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, autoimmune. I read that wrong. I was talking about autumn. I'm so sorry about that. I hope that things start working out well. Parsa says, "What up, chat? What up, Parsa? Mr. Colorado." welcome. But yeah, let's check out how we are doing. So if you're unfamiliar, we are watching and reacting to every single Alex O'Connor video on the internet. It's a big task. Alex O'Connor, if you're unfamiliar, he's a philosophy/atheist YouTuber. And he kind of got his spark when it came to the new atheistic movement in the kind of like mid to early 2000s. But now he's mostly just kind of producing content, podcast content, and he's kind of more agnostic in his thoughts. But over that long period of time, he has produced, and this is just videos, this is not including shorts, 376 videos. 376 videos. That's a lot of content. A lot of that is an hour to 2 hours long. So you can kind of do the math, but I did it for you. It's approximately 261 hours of content. If you were to watch it straight through, that's about 10 days, 21 hours, 22 minutes, and 24 seconds of content. So we have a big task ahead of us. So let's check out, how are we doing? How are we doing with this task? Well, on my own, I have watched 116 videos of Alex O'Connor. And together through these live streams, we have watched 19. We are literally one away. After tonight, we are going to be at 20. 20. That's 2 decades. Come on now. We're going to be at 20 videos, so that will be very, very exciting. Yes. So I was just looking at the chat there. So this is going to be a really interesting talk. I am not exactly sure what to expect from this conversation. I just based on the title, it seems like it's going to be a bit of the kind of exploring his own perspective and also discussing Islam at large, some of the logical things behind Islam, things of that sort. So it should be a pretty interesting topic. It'll also be really interesting to just like compare and contrast like the Alex O'Connor we have and we know kind of today, for those who are familiar with him, with the Within Reason podcast, how he kind of conducts himself and talks about things in that podcast today versus how he did when he first started with a different name, the Cosmic Skeptic podcast. So it'll be quite the interesting thing to kind of compare and contrast and learn, and very excited. Jared, welcome to the live stream. I was just talking about how we, as a community, have almost watched 20 Alex O'Connor videos together, which is not a small feat. They're long. They're very long videos sometimes. And last week we knew that it was almost 2 hours, and you guys stuck along. Great job. Give yourselves a pat on the back. You guys are absolute legends. If you haven't already, drop me the emoji. What is the emoji of today? What are you, what emoji represents your day today? For me, it was a moon, just because I'm mourning the fact that, the days are getting shorter. I'm mourning that fact, man. It's a sad reality, but hey, it's a reality, and, you always adapt. It's the human spirit. Well, I say we get into this thing. So this is going to be Alex O'Connor's very first podcast episode, talking with Armin Navabi. Might have mispronounced that, but here we go.
Build a website you love with Wix, where your words create.
Where is it?
Let me start from the beginning.
This episode of the Cosmic Skeptic podcast is brought to you by you. To support the podcast, please visit patreon.com/Cosmic Skeptic.
As someone who does logos and things of that sort, as well as just the music there, that was pristine. Oh, super good. Definitely, Riley was mentioning about, not feeling too well and probably needing to sleep. So that's the kind of music I'd be able to sleep to, or study or work to. It's pretty legendary. It's crazy. I recognize that song from his future episodes, but I had no idea that this was actually part of his original content. It was his very first episode. He doesn't do that anymore. He just kind of gets straight into the podcast now. But that's so fascinating how you know, things evolve. So yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of the Cosmic Skeptic podcast. I'm lucky today to be joined by Armin Navabi, who is the founder of Atheist Republic and an atheist campaigner who specializes, I believe, in sort of ex-Muslim activism. Is that a fair assessment, would you say, Armin?
Yeah. I mean, Atheist Republic as a whole focus, does all religion and also other forms of dogma and superstition as well. But yeah, I know more about Islam because I'm an ex-Muslim. I do try to learn as much as possible about other religions as well, though.
Sure. Well, it's good to speak to you because a lot of people who do the kind of thing that I do on my YouTube channel, they tend to be in a similar position but towards Christianity. They know more about, like, I can speak for myself. I know a lot more about Christianity than other religions, so it's something I'll talk about a lot. So it's good to speak to someone who's kind of sways the other way. The reason that I originally wanted to reach out to you, Armin, we've spoken before. There was one time on a podcast, I think, with Genetically Modified Skeptic, and we spoke briefly. And then I recognized you at an event. I was at the London event with Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, and Douglas Murray, and I looked behind the barrier and I saw a familiar face, and we kind of caught each other's eyes and had a wave, but didn't get to properly speak to you. But then I was really surprised as a student, because I'm currently at university, when I opened my student newspaper to find your face on the front cover. And I thought, what's going on here? This is not the kind of thing that the Cherwell would usually post. And that's my student newspaper at Oxford. And I saw that there was a wonderful piece in there about your story and your activism. And you posted about it on social media and you seemed very proud of it. And then a few days later, I go onto Twitter and I see you accusing that magazine, that newspaper, of cowardice. And I mean, what on your end here? What happened? Can you sort of walk us through what happened with this interview with Cherwell?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like an interview just like many other ones. But by the way, what's his name? I have to remember his name. Where is it? They didn't. They already published it online, but they decided not to publish it. They published it on paper, but they didn't decide not to publish it online. And I thought it has something to do with the stuff that I mentioned about, transgender rights activism, which I'm very supportive of. But I also, anyways, I don't want to get into that detail of that. But it seemed like what they were upset about, what they found most sensitive was me talking about the Quran, and it's interesting because, what I said about Quran, it wasn't anything that you could dispute. Like, it was it was so obviously true what I said. I mean, I just referred to a verse in the Quran about the wife beating verse in the Quran, right? And they found that could be too, offensive or too sensitive for the students at your university.
And just to those who aren't familiar with the verse, because some people think that might be taken out of context or something. That's a verse that explicitly calls for the.
My name is Cecilia. I'm a mom of 2 girls, a psychologist, and I choose to transform my PBC
For the beating of wives.
Yeah. Okay. So to be fair, it first gives you 2 other methods to deal with disobedient wives, then
how charitable.
But then it tells you if those 2 doesn't work, then you can start beating her. I mean, it doesn't say you can start beating her. It's a command that you should start beating her, and it doesn't even tell you that you should beat your wife if she's disobedient. It tells you that if you should beat your wife even if you just fear disobedience, right? But it's not. It's pretty black. It's pretty clear. It's one of those verses that.
Okay, so I pulled up the verse that they're referring to. Again, I'm not super familiar with the Quran, so I don't know the context of this. But this is what we got here. It says, men are the caretaker. This is the English translation. So, people who believe in the Quran, from what I'm little understand, is the fact that they believe the only real Quran is the Arabic Quran, but this is a translation. Men are the caretakers of women, as men have been provisioned by Allah over women and tasked with supporting them financially. And righteous women are devoutly obedient, and, when alone, protective of what Allah has entrusted with them. And if you sense ill conduct from your women, advise them first. If they persist, do not share their beds. If they still persist, then discipline them gently. But if they change their ways, do not be unjust to them. Surely Allah is most high and all great. So this translation doesn't necessarily talk about like beating, but I mean, the original Arabic is really the thing that matters. This is a translation, right? So with translation comes a lot of interpretation on the translator's part. And so I would assume the piece that is talking about, something in terms of domestic sort of physical abuse would be this key phrase here: do not share, or not that part, then discipline them gently. So I'm curious what the word is there, but this seems to be suggestive at the least. So even if this is like a great translation, it still suggests something like, what are you talking about, and why are you doing it? Advisingly doing so gently. That's definitely an interesting one. So this comes from Surah 4:34. So again, I feel bad. The Quran and Islam is not my topic of speciality, but it is definitely good to look into these things and make sure that we are, talking about something legit. And to his credit, seems at least to be the case.
Leaves less room for, interpretation. The only thing that people can try to do is either say like, well, it's telling you to beat your wife lightly. Not, it doesn't say that you should beat her lightly. It just said beat them. But people say like, well, it means lightly, even if it doesn't say it. Or some people have just came up with some ridiculous excuses that the verb in there that it says daraba verb that means to beat means actually something else. But
Riley says, gently in quotes. Yeah, I guess that's true. It's right there, gently. This is also in quotes first, and if they persist, but if they I don't know. Yeah, gently. do so gently. Whatever that means, interesting.
Anybody that knows anything about Arabic knows that that's absolute nonsense. But that's something that is pretty clear in the Quran. So it was weird for me that was what they found too offensive. And I mean, again, this is not. A lot of people are like, oh, what happened to freedom of speech? I don't think this is a freedom of speech issue, because I mean, it's their platform. Having your right to speech doesn't mean you have the right to everyone's platform. But we still think it's ridiculous, even if it's not anti-free speech. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Not everything has to be against free speech for it to be a bad idea. It was still a idea that we could decision that we could call out as ridiculous, especially given that it's an insult to university students for you to think that this is something they can't handle. But I mean, every time I say, well, this is not against free speech, people think that I'm defending it. No, it's still a bad idea, even if it's not against free speech.
Right, because I was going to ask you about the free speech implications of this, and I think you're right that, I mean, I would agree that a platform has all the right in the world to choose who it platforms. But even if it's forgetting the kind of legal aspect, would you say that you feel morally your free speech has been violated, or do you think in a moral sense, do you think that the newspaper sort of has a kind of moral duty to produce this kind of content for university?
So for context, Alex has been discussing free speech a lot so far. In his last few videos, he talked about actually two different political figures, far right leaning figures that visited Oxford, which is where he's going to university at this time period, who were protested against, and people were stopping others from entering in to join the discussion or the debate that was happening at the I think Oxford Commons is what he referred to it as. And so he pleaded to his own governance, his own representative there in the UK, and basically was talking about this was a separate issue, but in a separate issue he wrote a actual letter to his representative, as well as a letter through video, which is what we watched in a different episode. You can check that out, different live stream. But basically, he was talking about how in schools they were stopping people from learning about LGBTQ plus information, things about homosexual love, lesbian love, things of that sort. There was some classes that were happening 4 times every single year in the UK, and these people were protesting against it, and they were stopping this from being taught in classes. This is a separate issue, and in that sort of process, the government stepped in and was like, yeah, you know what, we're not going to allow it. And a lot of that was driven by Islamic families who were protesting this from being taught in schools, not in private schools, but in public schools. And so Alex was writing about this, like, hey, look, they're not teaching anything that's like messed up. In fact, I looked at one of the books in the curriculum, and it's a very innocent book. Doesn't even mention anything about homosexuality or lesbians. It's just a kid who has 2 moms, and that's not even what it's about. It's about the moms, loving the kid and caring for the kid, and I love my mom about this. I love my mom about this. That was really all it was. So it's definitely really interesting to kind of see how this stuff just like gets perpetrated and free speech really gets impeded in that sense. So yeah, it's interesting.
University students, or do you think it really doesn't matter because it's now available?
But why I said that is this is kind of on topic when he's talking about this is something he's been talking about recently at this point in his YouTube career, which we're about 2 years into the YouTube career. So that's the whole background for all of you who haven't quite been, if you haven't been following. If you have, thank you. Also, give us a like and subscribe.
Basically anywhere on the internet.
No, I mean it matters, but it's not moral duty. It's not a free speech thing, right? I mean, it's their newspaper. They could decide what their moral duty is for themselves or their newspaper, right? But I still think, I mean, you going out and eating 8 cakes every day doesn't violate my free speech, but I could still tell you that, well, doesn't violate my free speech, but it's still a shitty idea to do that. Like, it's not good. Like, it has
shitty in the very real sense of the word.
It's still bizarre. I think it's still an insult to and it's very interesting that you said that, because these things, when they don't get when you do get deplatformed, it gets more attention, right? And more people end up reading it at the end of the day, right? Yeah. So
you might actually quite like this. When I found the piece, because I read it in the actual newspaper, and I had the piece that you've written, and I posted it on Twitter. And I looked up the circulation of the Cherwell magazine, and it's around 15,000 because it goes to all the colleges in Oxford. And the tweet that I put out, and I told people, can you please retweet this so it gets a lot of attention? And it got more circulation than the Cherwell got. So I think you're absolutely right. Like, and you probably, I mean, I'm sure I would have invited you on this podcast eventually, but maybe not to talk about this. And now I'm hoping that, and by the way, that's still on my Twitter, so anybody listening or watching can go and find that article. And you're right, like, it's amplified it because now you're here, and I'm compelling people who don't go to Oxford and who wouldn't have otherwise read it to go and read this article. So I think you're right. They're kind of shooting themselves in the foot there.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, because I don't know why they do it, given that everybody can see how it backfires, and it needs to backfire so that deplatforming doesn't work, right? Like, it's an important thing that every time people try to, remove a certain kind of speech, then they see, like, wow, this didn't work out the way we wanted to, so that they stop doing it. Like, let everybody, just give everybody a platform. Again, you don't have to. We just very much recommend it.
So did you get any kind of email or something sort of telling you that this wasn't going to be posted? Because I know that the editor who interviewed you, he actually
Yes.
resigned from the
Yeah.
Cherwell because
Yeah,
he
he
was so
did.
outraged by the fact that they wouldn't post his story on you. Did you have much of a kind
Freddie-
of conversation with
Fred-
him?
Yeah, he told me ahead of time. Freddie, he's amazing. Like he did it out of principle. Again, these are these are. It's not given that I say my free speech wasn't violated. People might say that's unnecessary, but no. But you still want more dialogue, right? Free speech is not enough. We want free speech, but we also want people to encourage more dialogue. And he quit the newspaper out of principle, and because of what he did, also this got a lot more attention. So I really admire him
Yeah,
for
that's
doing
right.
that.
Because he wrote an article for, I think it was the New Statesman, about this whole event, and so those people may themselves now want to go and read this article that you wrote. So what I probably want to get into now is what is it? I mean, what was the kind of outrageous, horrible Islamophobic nonsense that you were spewing? What was the contents of this article? Why were you being interviewed? What were you talking about in this article that was deemed too dangerous to be posted to the online Cherwell?
Well,
One thing I think they brought up a really good point, which is this idea of like censorship brings light to the things that you're wanting to sort of censor. I'm sure there's probably instances where that's not the case, but I mean, think of some of the most famous people, throughout history, like Jesus Christ, There's a sense in which he was crucified because people didn't like what he was saying, and he was crucified, in a sense, being censored for that very thing. Socrates is a similar thing if we're to, take Plato's perspective on the thing. Joseph Smith, he was also killed because he was espousing things, and yet all of these figures we know very well. I mean, something that's recently happened with Charlie Kirk, he was recently killed, and you know what? Everyone's talking about him. And in a sense, his legacy is bigger now because he's been killed for what he did. Now, killing's definitely a much further kind of way of taking things, but I think that the sentiment is still there. Like when we try to censor things, I think that sort of effort can be kind of just in vain. Not only is it kind of gross or bad in that sense, but it's also just like, your effort might just be in vain. You know what I mean? Like, so I definitely agree. I think it's hard though. Like when I look at the internet as just an entity in and of itself, a lot of the time the stuff you just hear it once and you just accept it. People are not really taught to question and to be skeptical of the things that they learn and the things that they hear from people, and like how to like find solid information, and so that's another aspect which I think can be dangerous is if someone is more entertaining or more like able to kind of tell things in a way that are interesting to you, you might not actually get a full story, right? Because a lot of the time we just accept things because they sort of fit with the puzzle piece that we're putting together from our own experience, They just kind of like what you said, oh, that resonates with me. That makes sense, but you're not really questioning them because it adds up according to what you've already experienced. But your experiences don't necessitate truth. They are subjective experiences. And so that's the kind of the underlying thing to all of this. If we want free speech, which I think we do, I want free speech to be a thing. The one thing what we need to make sure of is we're actually, teaching the younger generation to question things, how to, think about what they hear on the internet, how to think about what they hear from their parents, how to think about like the churches and the religious institutions that they participate in. What are the ways in which they should be thinking and processing information? That's all just as important as the information in and of itself, because it teaches people to be like independent and to not just kind of go with the flow, especially if we want a society that is going to be globalized, right? A global society, then we don't want to propagate something like that. Meansook says people can't handle the truth and believe and see what they want to believe in. Yes. I don't know if you were trying to quote from the movie, but you can't handle the truth. But it's true, kind of. I mean, I still think we should teach truth. I don't think that's a reason to not teach the truth or to tell people the truth. That should be definitely something that we strive for. What's up, Richard? Welcome to the live stream. So yeah, but I think that there's a balance here. And the balance is this. We should have free speech. We should have free expression, but we also need to recognize that with free speech, with great responsibility, right? Or great power comes great responsibility. And the power of free speech and free expression in a community, in a society, also comes with the responsibility of teaching people how to deal with conflicting ideas and so many different ideas, especially with the internet, So that, I think, is just as important. Teaching people how to think, how to process and question things is super important. So, this so far, this has been really interesting. I'm excited to see. He hasn't quite gotten too much into Islam yet, but we'll see.
It was a Quranic verse, but we talked about, the Islam, the regressive left, speech. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff, right? And one thing that was very similar between both religion and the regressive left was the idea that certain ideas should not be talked about, like Islam. Religion kind of popularized that idea, and now the regressive left is doing that as well. And another thing that seemed like very similar in both of these was the idea that that both of them have been trying to hijack certain values that have been working, right, and try to make it their own and take it into a different direction, right? So basically. But the order is different though. Like, for example, in Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they have been, for hundreds of years, they've been promoting ideas that have been very harmful to progress, right? But given that since the Enlightenment era in Western Europe and in America, there were certain ideas that became popular that ended up working so well and benefiting so many people and bringing so many people out of misery, that they, because of their nature, because of the fact that they work, they started spreading faster. And what these religions have been trying to do is to claim credit for them and pretend like they are responsible for them, even though they have been standing against them for hundreds of years. And what we're trying to do is, like, when people say, like, well, the Western Europe is based on Judeo-Christian values, or when people say, well, Islam supports gay rights and that kind of nonsense, or women's rights, we try to reclaim these values from religion and be like, no, you don't deserve any credit for this. You guys have been always against these values. You guys have been always standing in our way when it comes to progress, which is very interesting because it's kind of similar, but the other way around when it comes to the regressive left is that the people that have been championing the groups of people that were usually associated with championing these ideas, in the left, liberals, these are liberal values, have now, again, not all the left. There's a very loud minority in the left. I hope it's a minority, but they're very loud and very influential. They have been using these ideas to do something else now. Like, they're going, with the excuse of protecting minorities, which is, a good thing, protecting gay rights, protecting women rights. They have that banner, they have that label, but they're actually standing against liberal values. They're standing against, yeah.
But I was just going to ask, I mean, do you think that is a minority on the left when it comes to, I mean, if you're referring to in the sense that the left has kind of created an alliance with ideologies that seem to be completely anathema to the values that they ostensibly support, would you say that it's really a loud minority of people on the left who are supporting ideologies like that? Or do you think it's become a more mainstream aspect of the left to support pretty outrageous doctrines that if they weren't religious and didn't belong to a minority group, they would outright just condemn?
I think, I mean,
It's very, to me, it's very interesting. This kind of gets at the question of like, what is religion? Because when I think about like Western religions and like Abrahamic religions, specifically Christianity and Islam, generally it is about ideology. It's about ideas. It's about what they, teach. But most religions around the world, especially like Eastern traditional religion, they aren't anything about any of that, and that's, it's much more about practice. What do you do in your life? And what's the kind of philosophical worldview that you hold to? What are some of the meditations and the different practices that you hold to? And how does that, affect your life? And so to me, that it's just so, I guess, I can't, like, freedom of religion does not mean freedom to espouse dogma. I think sometimes Christianity and Islam can get conflated to just strict dogma, which I don't think is true. Like, it's not just strictly dogma. It's not just theology, but it's a way of life as well. It's a relationship with a personal creator. It's all of those things. And so, yes, the Bible is very much so a core to what Christianity is. And even more so, the Quran is the core to what Islam is. The Quran is supposed to be infallible. There cannot be even a punctuation mark that is incorrect in the Quran. Otherwise, the entire thing can be thrown out. So that, in a sense, is what makes it more important of a text than, say, the Bible is to Christianity. So it is a complicated issue, but at the same time, I want to push back against people who say, Islam is entirely evil, it's entirely bad, we need to just eradicate this ideology, because I think in some cases Islam, and this is coming from a guy who doesn't know a ton about Islam, but I do have friends who are Muslim, and from what I have experienced with them, they tend to be probably more progressive in their views. And that expression of Islam, is it true to the original Islam? Probably not. I don't know. I can't say that with surety, because I don't know. Maybe they have a good argument, and I'd be interested to hear it. But let's say it isn't. But it is still a version of Islam. It's an expression of Islam. And so, yes, it might not follow the Quran, but should we then say we want to get rid of Islam entirely? In saying that, you are basically saying that version, that expression of the faith, because it's not true to the core, to the foundation of what the ideology was, it is not valid, and people cannot express themselves in that way. So I want to push back against that whole idea of like, Islam's evil, we need to eradicate it, with this idea of like, well, there's versions of expressing Islam. Maybe they don't, qualify to the original essence of Islam, but they are valid in the sense that people express them and people find value in them. And that, I think, is worth accepting. So freedom of religion to me looks more like that. You can critique ideas. You can say this is wrong and this should not be propagated in society. Yeah, it's connected to this religion. I don't care, because you can still express that religion in a different way. You can still live according to the will of God in a different way. In fact, maybe what you're espousing isn't actually true to the original, because we don't really fully know. Like, there's so many factors involved with translation, with passing down, with history, that at least if the Quran's anything like the Bible, there's so many factors that I don't think we really know what the original Christians or what the original Muslims were espousing. So that whole idea is kind of murky. Like, we probably have a semblance of an idea, but do we have like a strong, like really firm idea in what it is? Probably not. That's why you have a lot of, modern day sort of Gnostics, or people who enjoy the Gnostic texts, and they're saying, and not illogically so, that these texts are probably older and probably have a firmer oral tradition. And some of them say that they're older than the canonical gospels that we have today, the synoptics and the Gospel of John. So this whole kind of topic, I think, is so complicated that you can't just say we need to eradicate this religion and everything's going to be better. That's just kind of absurd to me. But I think it's more of this idea of these ideas specifically need to be eradicated. We should not espouse that people beat their wives. That is not something we need to propagate in society. It's not a good thing. But what we can say is that there are some things in Islam that are good, and there are versions of and expressions of Islam that seem to be good and helpful for people. And so that is something that I'm all for, and we can celebrate, you know? Maybe I'm wrong, but this whole notion of like, it's entirely bad, I just find kind of, I don't know, silly. I don't know. I don't know enough about the subject to really say, but when it comes to Christianity and people do that, I know enough to say that you're missing the point. You're missing the point entirely. When it comes to Islam, my intuition says it's probably the same thing.
I'm not sure, but I think it's a loud but influential minority. I think most people are on the left. I might be wrong. I'm not very sure, but I mean, I have a lot of, for example, when we talk to transgender people, right? It seems like they support transgender rights, but if you, for example, ask them, do you think most transgender people I talk to, again, this is not scientific, way of collecting data, so I don't know, but if it's correct or not. But it seems like they are against making it illegal, for example, to use wrong pronouns. This is what most transgender people that I talk to say. And if, for example, feminists, right? Like, if you don't go into, so you hear a lot of outrageous things that feminists say, and a lot of them are actually legit ridiculous if that's what they're saying, and the loudest ones are actually saying that. But when I go actually into their circles, when I go into their subreddits, it seems like a lot of the stuff that they're saying is not that insane. So I don't know. Is it that most feminists have lost it, or is it that the ones that have lost it are just more interesting to talk about, and that's why they get more attention? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Do you think they're
That's definitely how I feel about so many things, especially with the internet. The far, leaning perspectives are the ones, the extreme versions of things are usually the ones that people see a lot of the time because they're just so crazy, and someone's like, whoa, I gotta click on that, it's insane.
just getting more attention with their opposition, with the people who are kind of So why? I mean, do you think that there should be more within the communities of the kind of reasonable left, let's say, to condemn the extreme fringes of the left that are really acting against them? Because I'm not really seeing as much of that as I'd like to. I think, at least not as much as there is on the right, I think.
Yeah, so I think they have a PR problem. Like, either you could either accuse the worst that we could accuse the left of is that this is actually most of the left, and if that's true, then that's a huge tragedy, because they used to be champions of liberal values, and it's so sad that if we have lost most of the left. But that's the worst we could say. But the best we could say is that you guys have done a terrible job at championing these. You even if most of you don't agree with the regressive left, well, then why are you? Then speak out or say something. You have a huge PR problem. Like, is feminism, for example, the name is so toxic now that a lot of women that fight for legit, equal opportunity, and a lot of women that fight for women's rights around the world, like, are now, I notice some of them are saying, like, yeah, I'm a women's rights advocate. They don't even use the word feminist, right? Because of how toxic. But I don't know, like, is it too late to save that word? Like, for example, a lot of us, I notice a lot of liberals are saying like, you know what, I'm not going to use the word liberal anymore. I'm a classical liberal. I like, well, can we not give up the word liberal? Like, can we try to like save it? I don't want to give up on that.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
but
there are two different ways. There are two ways, I think, in how the left is betraying itself on the extremist fringes. I mean, the first is when you have a group like people, like you say, people who begin to call themselves women's rights activists, and they're just shitting on men, for instance. Like these people, like they're easy enough to condemn on the left, but there's another group who aren't as transparent about it, who say that they are for the protection of the rights of gay people and women, etc., and yet they're supporting an ideology which is completely counter to these things. Why on earth do you think it is? Because it's something I really struggle to get my head around. How did this happen? How did we get the left of politics, the progressive protectors of minority rights, to begin supporting ideologies which are one of the biggest threats to these minorities? Why do you think that's happened? I mean, to me, the best guess that I can come up with is that the left has an inbuilt tendency to ally itself with marginalized groups. And because there is a real problem of anti-Muslim bigotry, the left has kind of allied themselves with the Muslims. But in doing so, they've also got a bit confused and allied themselves with the ideology that these people hold, which isn't what they should be allying themselves with, but just the people. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on this and why there's been this new kind of alliance spring up.
Well, okay, so I think it's two things. First of all, it's kind of like a pendulum swing, and I think it's going to keep happening on the other side as well now. Which what I mean is that okay, so you have some legit problems, right? Women rights and people racism, gay rights, whatever. Like these are some, let's say, legit issues in society, and you're trying to adjust for that. And once you at some point you're going to keep asking for what you're asking for is equality, but then at some point you start asking for privileges instead of equality. And again, even if there are some, then you will see some examples of people asking for stuff that originally nobody asked for, right? I mean, even with the atheist movement is starting to happen. Even like I noticed that what we're asking for is to be treated, for example, equally, like not to be discriminated against just because we're atheists. But then I saw like there was this place in London, they were like, no jokes against atheists. I was like, okay, no, please don't, we're not asking for that, okay? Please joke against atheists as much as you want. But it basically just over adjusts. Not that there are still not legit issues that we need to deal with these things, but there will always be example of over adjustment. And people are like, well, if it's okay to have over adjustment because we have so much problems on this side, like when it comes to, for example, gay rights, that a little bit of over adjustment, it doesn't matter. I'm like, no, actually over adjustment doesn't help. Over adjustment hurts your movement, right? Because whenever you have over adjustment, the people that are against gay rights, for example, will use those examples of over adjustment to dismiss your entire movement. That's how you get such bad PR that will just destroy your entire momentum.
I think it's so fascinating how much of this conversation is about PR. Like it's about your public, face and everything like that. And it's almost like annoying, but at the same time very important when it comes to discussing these sort of topics, because as I kind of prefaced earlier, free speech, a lot of it is about how you present your ideas, not just what your ideas are, right? Because anyone can do the research and spend hours looking into a topic and figure out, okay, what seems to make the most sense, right? Most people don't do that though. And most people, I'm a victim of this as well. We just accept things. And it's really based on the premise of what correlates best with how I am currently understanding the world to be, and what correlates best with how I currently feel. And so a lot of it has to do with this idea of PR. Like, okay, we need to present ourselves as best as we can in the most charitable and good way possible. And, we see this with politics all the time. Like Trump, if anything, Trump is an excellent person when it comes to PR. He's Very good. Like anytime he is talking about a study, it doesn't even matter if he's read the study, if he knows anything about autism. I'll just go outright and say it. It doesn't matter if Trump knows anything about autism, or the studies he's alluding to. Just the fact that he is quoting statistics and saying, we know this to be an epidemic in America, that, 1 in 20,000 people used to be autistic, and now it's down to 1 in 31. Just the fact that he quotes that with confidence is enough to sway people. And it's crazy. Reality is, if you don't know, yes, it has gone up, but that's not because more people are autistic. It's because our ability to diagnose autism has become better. So it's not more people are autistic. It's that more people are being diagnosed autistic because our methods of understanding ASD, which is a spectrum. It's not just one thing. It's, people can be very, functional in life. There's autism 1, 2, and 3. But the idea here is it's kind of a non-issue, but it's the presentation that is important, and it sways people. So definitely something to keep in mind. The next time you hear something, don't just take it. Don't take it right off. Think about it and really test it.
So I think the over-adjustment, because we're going too crazy with a lot of these things, when we are going to have over-adjustment, correction on the other way again. Like we're going to have, as a response to regressive left, we're going to empower more racism, more sexism, more homophobia. Again, the pendulum will swing on the other side as well. And what we need to do, the people that see the swing, we need to just try to keep holding it. Like what we want is equal opportunity for everybody, and we just need to make sure that the swing is not too much on all sides. And another thing I think is that when you start fighting for, fighting against a certain disease, at some point you build your entire identity as opposition to those diseases, and it's kind of like being a firefighter that is hoping for fires to happen, right? Because that's your entire identity. So then if you're a feminist, or if you're a gay rights activist, then at some point, I don't know, you might not even notice it, you're wanting more homophobia to be out there. You want more misogyny to be out there, because that's how you become relevant, right? And if you're...
That's a really good point. This is something I've noticed a lot lately. When it comes, like, for personally, I don't think it's probably been propagating more frequently, just something I've noticed more frequently. And it's this idea of like being an activist as an identity. Like I identify as sort of an activist. I identify as someone who fights for minorities, which is not bad. Like it's good to fight for minorities, but if that's your identity, like he's saying, that becomes something that you look for actively. It's not really something you're doing as a way of fighting against injustices. No, it's basically a way of validating yourself in the things that you do. And so there's an important distinction. And I think the reason I bring this up is because Alex himself was sort of, he was critiqued because he wasn't basically being an activist for when he visited like the Flagrant podcast, kind of right-leaning podcasts. I'm not really necessarily right or left, but Alex is more left-leaning. And so when he visited these podcasts who were sort of right-leaning, he didn't really push back on the fact that, you helped Trump get elected, or you helped, homophobia be propagated in America, because you weren't pushing back on these things. You weren't calling them out for these things. Instead, you just kind of joked around and you had fun, discussing, the trolley problem. And to me, it's like, are we really supposed to just always be calling for activism, always be, acting in a way to call people out for like, that's exhausting to me. And I don't think that's why we do things like activism. We don't do activism for the sake of activism. We participate in it because we see an injustice and we want that injustice fixed. And so when, say you choose not to, participate, and it's not like Alex doesn't participate in these things. He still does, probably to a lesser degree than he used to do. But he doesn't have to do it all the time. And his platform doesn't need to be about that. People, that is their platform, and that's fine. You can do that. But your platform doesn't need to be about that, especially if you're talking about philosophy and religion. Like, that's not necessarily the niche that you're in. And yeah, to me, it was, I don't know. I get somewhat where he's coming from, but at the same time, I think it misses the whole concept of why we do activism, which is to fix problems. It's not to find problems. It's to fix problems. So yeah, what he's saying here makes a lot of sense to me.
So desperate for these things to be there, and maybe where you are you can't find it, then what you do is you loosen the definition of what it is to be misogynist, or what it is to be homophobic, and you try to push people to become more misogynistic or more whatever, because you want that their circle to grow, because the bigger they are, the more relevant you are, the more of a purpose you have.
Right. So you think it's kind of like a virtue signaling type thing. I suppose the equivalent would be someone like you or I wishing there to be more Islamic extremism or right-wing bigotry just to keep us in a job and make sure that we can put out a witty tweet and stay relevant. I mean, is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. Like we see this, for example, in atheist right activism as well, is that you see a lot of claims, for example, people saying that all the problem in the world is because of religion, or that religion is the greatest evil. And like, religion doesn't have to be all the evil in the world for it to be worth talking about, right? Like, you don't have to make this bigger than it is. There are a lot of evil in the world that has nothing to do with religion. Okay, the problem that you're dealing with doesn't have to be the only source of evil for it to be worth talking about, right? I mean, I see feminists thinking that everything is because of misogyny. All the problem in the world somehow relates to the patriarchy or something like that. So I mean, I think it's very interesting, because my dad is a heart surgeon, and I went to him, asked him, like, would you wish that one day there's nobody had a heart disease? Like, if you could go like this and nobody has a heart disease, would you do that? And he was like, of course I would do it right away. And we're like, but you won't have a job. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I think we should think about that. Like, we should want the evil to go away. Like, we could move on to saying something else. Like, if the evil that you're fighting goes away, I mean, maybe you just move on to talking about something else. It's okay. It's good. I mean, the point of atheist rights activism is to one day make atheist rights activism unnecessary.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think it's probably the problem with these be-all and end-all sociological theories that claim that they found the one thing that is causing all the problems in society, whether it be capitalism, or whether it be the patriarchy, or whether it be whatever. Even if these things exist and are problematic, like, you don't need to accept them as the one thing that if we manage to dismantle, then everything's going to be okay and we'll live in a utopia. I think that's right.
Right.
I wonder what you think. I mean, if you were able to kind of, you say the left has got a PR problem, which I think is fairly undeniable at this point. But what do you do if you're given, as a man who I presume would place himself on the political left, correct me if I'm wrong there, but if you had this megaphone to put out a statement on behalf of the left, what would you want it to say to fix this problem?
Well, I think we would want to go back to the Enlightenment values. I mean, this is what we're trying to do now, actually, with Atheist Republic. And I know we're going to get a lot of pushback on this because we have been standing against certain values for more than a decade now, which is against dogma, superstition, and religion, and all of that. And now we want to stand for certain values, and we have to remind ourselves what those values are and why we stand for them. It's like, the values, the Enlightenment values, originally when they came, the people had different excuses for why we should go for them. Some people like it's ordained by God, like these are, rights, natural rights and stuff like that. But now we don't have to make those kind of excuses because now we've seen what they do for civilization. Like we have data, we can show that standing for due process, standing for free speech, standing for human rights, standing for all these values that the Enlightenment era gave us. We have the data to back up the reason why these work. So we don't want to just stand against certain values. We now want to become the cheerleaders of the values that have made the world a better place. And I think what we haven't done very well is that we haven't shown people what to be thankful to, right? These values, we have been done a very good job at being like, these are bad ideas, right? What we haven't done a good job is to be like, these are the values that we need to celebrate, right? This is why your child is not, your wife didn't die in childbirth.
Yeah.
This is why you have clean water. This is why your voice can be heard. You can say whatever you want, and somebody's not going to show up at your door and arrest you because you said something wrong, right?
Well, it doesn't get as much attention. This is something I saw Steven Pinker speaking in Oxford last week, and he's written this book, Enlightenment Now, which is essentially the way that he. Yeah, you've got it yourself. I mean, it's a wonderful book, and I think the whole point of what he's saying, this is what he said anyway, was that we spend too much time focusing, like you say, on what we shouldn't be doing and what's wrong to think. But there's not much. It's like, what do we believe in? What is there to believe in if we don't believe in religion? If we don't believe in a particular politic, like what is the ideology that we can get behind?
Right.
And for him, he's very much pointing out the fact that there is endless news about bad instances, things that happen, and this gives people the idea that the world's in a much worse shape than it is, because the news is covering when there's a stabbing or a shooting or some kind of problem. But he was saying it's interesting, you don't get the headlines like, this many people have been cured of this disease since the 80s. This many people, like this is how things are going well, and he suggests in the newspapers next to the headline.
I got a comment here. So this, I think, is in reference to the idea of like activism. It's kind of like how some Christians constantly call out demonic stuff, which is pretty demonic in and of itself. Compared to the comments about activism. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something you see a lot, especially when it comes to the, Pentecostal church. Is this idea of like calling out demonic things all the time, and it's kind of interesting. In some sense, a lot of it is kind of based on like this sort of feeling that people get. Maybe it's the Holy Spirit, but it's this sort of like feeling that this is demonic or this is bad. But a lot of the time there isn't a lot of justification for it. And so, yeah, if the whole concept of calling out something as demonic is because you're searching for it to be demonic, you're searching for, things to be attacking you. I think this is another part of what you're saying, which is this idea of like, the devil made me do it, right? This idea of like, I'm not responsible for the evil things I do, or, I'm not responsible for anything that sort of maybe happens to me because I'm not sort of actively, fighting against something. I don't know. The fact that you can call it demonic is, yeah, exactly, is so just, it takes away responsibility. It takes away your actual actions, and it makes you the ultimate good, and anything else, anything external to you, as something that is either demonic and evil, or has the potential of being demonic and evil if you so deem it to be demonic and evil. And so I think, yeah, you're right. It's very dangerous, this sort of line of thinking. And I'd be curious if, people who maybe have deconstructed from the faith and have adopted this more kind of activist sort of perspective, I wonder how many of them maybe came from that kind of background or that kind of perspective. That'd be a very interesting one. Yeah, Christ, focus on me, i.e. love. Demons, focus on us, i.e. hate. Yeah, no, that's a really cool connection. Thanks for sharing that. That's super cool.
And having a kind of, he mentioned there are certain things that get a consistent report, like the stock market or the weather. It doesn't matter what the weather is. There's not only a headline every time it's going to be thunderstorms, where the headline is about the fact that it's going to be raining horribly and everyone needs to get inside. It's not just in these extreme cases, but every single day it will be like, the weather is mild today, the weather is sunny today. And he says, why not have the same thing about infant mortality rate or levels of education? Just remind people every day, this is getting better, this is going well, and don't just have the bad headlines. But because we're talking about now something to actively believe in, but your organization is the Atheist Republic, and the way that I viewed atheism, and the way that a lot of people I know view atheism, is as a very passive thing. Do you see atheism as a more active thing, especially if you're going to now try to kind of connect these Enlightenment values to it? Are you suggesting that if you're an atheist, then perhaps you should be thinking this thing in the affirmative?
No, no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure what he's going to say is that, this is something that you can be even with faith. I think that's why people who are atheists tend to prefer the term either humanist, or they prefer the term skeptic, because both of those are things that are external to atheism, where atheism is this idea of rejecting the notion that there is sort of a God. Skepticism is the idea of not just accepting what you are told, not accepting dogma, but getting to the bottom of things and finding a reason to believe what you believe, and not just taking things for granted, which there's so many great Christians, so many great channels that I know of that do this super well. And so that I think is something that we can all strive for, that we can all sort of seek after. So I missed the first hour of this. What are we ultimately talking about? I see it's about Islam, but unsure what I missed in general. Yeah. So basically so far, this guy over here, I'll pull him up. Armin Navabi. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he was canceled by Oxford. He went out to and released a basically article discussing how Islam is misogynistic, and it calls for people to beat their wives, things of that sort. We talked a little about the verse he mentioned in his article. It wasn't even the main focus of the article, but it was something mentioned in this Surah 34 here, which calls for them to discipline them gently. And I guess when you look at the actual Arabic, it's not really just talking about gentle sort of discussion, but it's talking about physical harm. And so basically he was critiquing Islam publicly, and that was published in Oxford, and Oxford took it down. They censored him. And lo and behold, then Alex comes out and says, hey, retweet this. I think that whatever he's talking about is important. And so that became more visible and more people were seeing it. And so the whole idea of like canceling Armin was kind of fruitless. And so they started out the conversation kind of talking about free speech and freedom of expression. And it's kind of then evolved into, okay, what does Islam actually say? What were you trying to actually talk about in your original article? And now what he's talking about is I am pro enlightenment ideas. I'm not necessarily pro atheism, but I'm pro the types of things that the atheist movement sort of sprouted, which is kind of predated by these enlightenment ideas for the Christian sort of scientists at the time. So that's where we're at so far.
No. Atheism is nothing other than a lack of belief in God. This is what we're suggesting is what Atheist Republic stands for, not what atheism stands for. Atheism, we don't represent atheism. We represent Atheist Republic, right? I mean, if you people are like, well, the atheist is in your name. Yeah, I mean, but if you say, if you open an organization says that Americans against racism, that's not changing the definition of what it means to be American. That's just your organization is Americans against racism. That you're not redefining American, right? So this has nothing to do with redefining atheism or making atheism to mean something positive, standing for something. This is just what Atheist Republic stands for, right?
Sure.
And we so it's interesting. I said, the thing in the newspaper with weather and stuff. The problem is that, infant mortality and other stuff, like, it's not, you can't ask newspapers or other news outlets to do that, because they are for-profit organizations, and these are just not that interesting. The thing is with weather is people want to know what the weather is, right? Like, they want to know because they want to know, like, if they need an umbrella or not, right? But
so true.
They're like, if they see child mortality, like, okay, whatever. Like, why it's just taking up real estate on their platform that people that are not interested.
I mean, maybe the problem is that people aren't interested in that. I mean, why shouldn't we be interested in the fact that the world is getting better on almost every measurable metric? Everything is improving. Why is it that people just don't care about that? Like, this is improvements to our lives, to our children's lives, and people just don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
that's so fascinating. That's a very interesting topic. That kind of reminds me, did you guys ever watch the John Krasinski news during COVID? When COVID first kind of came out, I think it was called Just Good News. He started releasing YouTube videos, basically doing a news report every day, where he just talked about good things that were happening in his community, nationally, even globally. And it was cool to kind of see the emphasis of like good news, not the emphasis on, some of the bad things. And as someone who, has worked with like local news, that is something that people do. We have the parades, we have, different dog shelters, opportunities for you to sort of give and contribute to the community. That is represented. People don't really talk about it because they're not the popular stories, but it's not like that's never talked about, like people kind of tend to say. But it's just so interesting, though, that the stories that captivate us the most are the stories of tragedy, the stories of kind of like, oh, this is so bad, and probably because of people have a lot of deep convictions about some of these things, either defending it, saying this is actually a good thing, you shouldn't think of it as bad, or saying, no, this is bad, we should really think about this as bad. The controversial and the kind of hard things in life is what we tend to find most interesting, because maybe it's because we sort of evolved from a sort of dangerous situation where we're constantly having to look out for the things that are dangerous to us and not necessarily have to look out for the things that are just good, because things that are dangerous, things that are bad are generally things we have to give attention to, whereas things that are good aren't really necessarily things we have to give attention to. They're just kind of things that are just are, and we can let be. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely an interesting discussion, but yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know why they're not. It seems like they're more interested in, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So if it's a tragedy, it's more interesting, right? But I don't know why. I guess our brains are wired like that. But we need to figure out a way to make it interesting instead of just asking people like, be interested. Well, they're not, right? So it's our job to find how to make it interesting. And I think so. Here's the silver lining with religion. Religion has identified our needs and our desires, throughout history. The problem is that it has came up with really shitty answers, right? But if you look at if you want to run tests on humans, you can't put humans in like labs and just put humans in like test tubes and just have a control and then see what they react to. So you can't run experiments on societies. The closest thing you have to that is history. And if you look at religion and the ones that died and the ones that survived, the ones that lasted longer, what you could do is at least you could say, well, the answers to these questions are not correct. Obviously, they make ridiculous claims, but at least given their survival rate, you could identify what humans are looking for, right? You can see their desires. Like these memes would not become this popular if it wasn't speaking to something within us, right? And there's no psychological test that you could run that will give you these answers, because these religions are tests already that have been running for thousands of years. So you can see that it seems like we need a sense of belonging, we need inspiration, we need awe, we need a sense of significance. You could see these things that religion is trying to speak to, and then what you could do is like, okay, let's try to see if we could respond to that, but without all the nonsense, right? Like take out all the nonsense and see what is religion trying to speak to that we could try to provide in a better way. Because religion, even though it doesn't have answers that is based on facts, it's not based on how the universe works, it's not based on how our mind works, but it has done what we have failed to do when it comes to popularizing the enlightenment values.
Right.
It has done a very good PR job, right? It has done a very good job at selling itself. So why can't we do what religion is doing for bad ideas? Why can't we find a way to do a good job for values that actually has benefited people? Like we need to, like these values like that Steven Pinker talks about. We need to find a way to become cheerleaders for ideas that actually has saved people.
But
right?
do you worry that they can have the opposite effect as well? Because you take like the Enlightenment values coinciding with the scientific age, which prove to us that we are just tiny specks on a tiny rock in the middle of a galaxy that is untouchable by any other galaxy for light years. Like the same kind of value and drive for science and reason that gave us the Enlightenment values also gave us this incredibly nihilistic sense that there's no real ultimate purpose to anything. How do you personally, and I suppose as an organization, how do you square that? Like how do you, it's one thing to just say, well, look at a picture from the Hubble telescope and it just fills you with awe and meaning and purpose, but what do you really mean? I mean, there's no purpose there. Where can you fill that gap with just these secular, purely naturalistic Enlightenment values?
The other thing I want to add to that is, because I agree with that. I think, to me, that shows that there is a sense of just good and bad with every sort of ideology that you are going to say. There's going to be trade-offs to everything. And so you can't just say like, well, secularism and living as if God does not exist, that is superior to every sort of religion. First off, have you looked into every sort of religion and given it its time? Probably not. Most people have not. The other thing that I want to say, though, is that when I was a Christian, there were so many good things that I learned. There's things that I still apply to my life that came from the words of Jesus that I am like very pro. I'm like, yes, that is good. There's some things that, I don't currently adopt anymore, but I would say most of the things that I grew up believing and that I grew up, thinking to be true, I still hold to and I think are very important. And so to kind of say that one ideology is superior and that, religion teaches, garbage stuff, I'm like, I get probably where he's coming from. He's probably had some sort of hurt from religion, but at the same time, there are people who have had great breakthrough and have been impacted, truly impacted in good and positive ways because of religion. And so what that tells me is that we can't just throw out an ideology because it's hurt some people. Instead, what we need to do is identify the good in these ideologies and promote those things. That, to me, seems to be the best course of action. Sorry, this is off topic. I'm curious, what is your religious or spiritual background? What do you currently identify as, align with? Also, what about in terms of philosophy? Any schools of thoughts? Wow, very good question. I mean, I kind of answered some of that in that last little part there. So I grew up in the Pentecostal church, and then after that, I had some time in more of like a Baptist sort of church, as well as kind of Calvinistic culture. So that was kind of where I was at. And especially in my college years, I was exploring a lot of topics, especially along the lines of like apologetics and watching a lot of apologetic like videos. And, Mike Winger was probably one of my favorite apologists out there, as well as a ton of other people. So that was kind of where I came from. And I was preparing to be actually a missionary overseas to plant churches. And I'd been on a few like trips just overseas, sharing the gospel and, helping new churches, things of that sort. And I came across a lot of different ideologies, different perspectives, and started to realize just how fervent people are about their different faiths. And so that became, something that I was like, that's interesting. I very much so believe what I believe, mainly because it's changed my life for the positive. It's really impacted me in a positive way. But these other people seem to be just as impacted and seem to be just as, benefiting from their ideologies. These people specifically were Hindu, and some of them were also Islam as well. The Islamic people, I was able to have more apologetic conversations, but the people who are Hindu, outside of apologetics, they were being impacted in very deep and personal ways, in ways that are beautiful, things of that sort. So that kind of got me along the lines of like questioning and things of that sort. And eventually, after about, almost a year of kind of doubting my faith and searching into things a little bit deeper, and maybe considering like a more skeptical perspective when it comes to God, I became, I guess, I would say I'm agnostic. I don't really know exactly how to identify myself. I'm not against religion. I actually love it. I think it's great. I've been very much so impacted by the stories of Jesus and him as an archetype. To me, I kind of view religion in terms of archetypes. Him as an archetype is someone that I admire and I look up to a lot. And so that has nothing to do with the truth claims. And to me, that shouldn't matter as much, unless you're trying to espouse certain things that I don't think are good for society that are in the Bible. So that's kind of where I stand with that sort of thing. In terms of like philosophy, I don't know, like the topics of like free will, I tend to be a compatibilist. So if you're unfamiliar, basically a compatibilist is someone who, in the sense of defining free will as the ability to choose otherwise, I don't think there is any sort of ability to have chosen otherwise. So in that sense of free will, I don't think it exists. So me and a determinist would probably agree in ontological sense. But in terms of like actual practice, and in terms of like morality, and in terms of how I understand the world, I think free will does exist because we as agents are able to make decisions. So we may not be able to choose otherwise, but we can make decisions. And so that, to me, that's what's most important when it comes to the discussion of free will. And so that's why I consider myself a compatibilist. Some people reject compatibilism because they think it's a non sequitur. I still think the notion that you can choose to do things as opposed to like fatalism makes it important, makes it really good. So, Wesley Curry, you say that Jesus never appeared to you and that Jesus never told you to tell the vision. I never said that. I definitely would say I had like an experience that I at least thought at the time was Jesus. And that's what caused me to be a Christian and to want to plant churches and share my faith. So, yeah. And I actually find those experiences to be very meaningful. So, yeah, no, I appreciate the comment though. You mentioned the archetype of Jesus of Nazareth. Are you influenced by yes, dude. Yes. Union thought. That's good. I love reading his works, especially about symbolism and his time as a dream analyst. Yes. No, that's some really good stuff. I had a podcast where I interviewed Cade Bradley. Actually, we went into that theory a little bit because Jordan Peterson's a big advocate of it, especially in his book Maps of Meaning. That's a lot of it was influenced by Union theory, and so no, it's some pretty cool stuff. But yeah, so definitely check out that podcast if you're into it. But I think the thing that I found kind of most interesting about that is just how you can kind of understand religion and faith as a true archetype that you can aspire to, similar to fiction. There's characters in fiction where you can look to, and I'm not saying I'm not a mythicist. I think Jesus did exist as a historical figure, but I don't think all his stories and the things that happened are actual ontological facts of reality. And so in that sense, he's an archetype. And so I find that very interesting. Is what Jesus okay. And his visions and dreams. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you're quoting Revelation, so excellent. Thank you for the comment. But yeah, let's get back to the video and hear the rest of what he has to say.
Well, we don't wait for the universe to give us purpose. We just make purpose, and we make purpose that people, we come up with purpose. And
but what does that mean? I mean, what do you mean by purpose there? Like, how can you create purpose? A purpose is something to be fulfilled rather than something to be created, surely.
No, well, you create it, then you fulfill it, and it's a lot more. It's a lot easier to fulfill if it's a purpose that you decided for yourself. I mean, if it's a purpose that universe decided for you, then it might not be a purpose that you enjoy fulfilling. But if you do create a purpose yourself, then it's a purpose that fits your personality and fits your desires better, and it's much easier to fulfill that. I mean. It's kind of weird that we want the universe to give us a purpose. I mean, the universe is not conscious. It's kind of like waiting. It's kind of like being up. The universe doesn't care about that. So people are like, oh, it's so sad. The universe doesn't care. Like, why would you want the universe to care? The universe is not conscious. It's kind of like saying my shoe doesn't care about me. How tragic, Why would you want something that is not conscious to care about you? You want the source of care look for care from your fellow human beings, from things that are capable of caring.
I mean, I think the reason for that is probably because for so many years people did believe that the universe was conscious and did care, in the sense that it was infused with some kind of religiosity or some kind of divine spirit.
Exactly. See, this is the issue. A lot of people think that people can't deal with that, thinking that the universe cares about them. The only people that care are the people that used to be religious and now they're not. The people that were never religious to begin with don't get why this is such a tragedy. But there's not a hole that this is a thing that religious pretends it's a made up hole that they're trying to fill. The hole is not really there.
Right. It's
not really there. We can find people that were never religious, they find sense of significance plenty in many other places.
But
it's not a problem.
Do you see the kind of the I don't know, the metaphysical problem of this, which is that if you've got a purpose that you create for yourself and then fulfill, that purpose seems fairly shallow in the sense that it could have been anything. You could have created any purpose for yourself and then fulfilled it. Like that itself, that cycle, it completes the full circle. Like you are just a meaningless being who creates purpose then fulfills it, and that's just an isolated circle with no connection to anything.
Hey, Wesley, I'm going to put you on pause just for a couple minutes. I'm all for like sharing your ideas and things of that sort, but I do want to make sure that, I don't appreciate like, spamming the same message over and over again. So I'll just put you on pause here for, I'll do just a minute, but if it keeps going, I will have to kick you. So just a warning on that. I do appreciate you, joining the conversation. And if you have things to share, go for it. But at the same time, people don't want to watch spam. Okay. And I will not tolerate that. So appreciate the sharing of the ideas though.
Of any
So
relevance.
see, this is the way how you phrase it, how you market it. You could say that, or you could be like, well, this is my personal purpose. This is something I created. This is something that belongs to me. Again, you could sell it as something meaningless because you just made it up, or you could be like, well, you made this. This is yours. See how you could just it's basically saying the same thing, but if you could see it as something positive because you made it. I mean, it's a lot of people say like, this is meaningless because it's a social construct. Like some of the best things we have ever came up with are social construct. Like free speech is a social construct. Like equality is a social construct. Social construct doesn't mean it's made up, and it's made up for a good reason. And I'm glad that we made it up. Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the systems and processes of the way we run society, they are made up. And good thing, and a lot of people's lives are better because we made it up. Like,
but I think that there is the realization that many people have. Like, somebody might have a Marxist awakening to realize that the capitalist economic system that they've been living with and accepting as a given is just this made-up system, and all of a sudden they have this nihilistic crisis that there's nothing at the basis of this reality that they're living, and it causes
we are at the
great
basis.
distress.
Yeah, so we have to rewrite the story. Like we are like so you wanted God to be the creator of things that for it to become meaningful. I would like, why not? If God was the creator of something, that would make it meaningful. But why can't we be the creators of things? Why can't that give meaning to things? Like we are like, okay, we made these things up. Like, because we made it, it's meaningless. Like, no, but we are the gods of these things that we made up. Like we are the creators. Isn't that amazing? Like we made this up, and okay, why is made up a bad thing? If we made it up, we deserve credit for creating them. Like, you have to feel powerful that we managed to come up with things that we created. Why is it that if some other entity creates things, it's meaningful, and now that we are creating things, it's meaningless? Isn't that more meaningful if we are the creators of these great things?
That's an interesting idea. I think it gets to this idea of transcendence, which is often talked about in philosophical circles. And we tend to be people who strive for things that are transcendent, things that are beyond just kind of human intervention. In Jewish thought, this is what they mean by that which is clean versus unclean. So anything that's like human oriented, that's all that is going to be unclean. So things like going to the bathroom, things like, having intercourse, those are things that are not godly. And so they are not clean. But the things that are, godly, that's what is clean. And so at the same kind of thought, we can kind of espouse and identify toward this idea of transcendence. The interesting thing, though, is Eastern thought has a lot more to say about transcendence, and it basically sees transcendence in the little things. The dung of a beetle. And we gotta look at that. That's like, why would that be transcendent? Why is that amazing? But it's the fact that is part of the human condition. It's part of life. It's part of consciousness. It's a part of the reality that we are a part of. And how amazing is it that we get to be a part of this thing that we don't fully understand, and yet we get to understand more and more as we experience it. And that's kind of the beauty of that. And so transcendence doesn't have to be this. It can be. I'm not saying it can't be, but it doesn't have to be this sort of higher level thing. It can be a recognition of that which is in front of you, which I find to be pretty beautiful. I really enjoy that. Speaking of which, is it true that today a Jewish rabbi just had a bless a product for it to be kosher? I heard that once, but wasn't sure about that source. Oh, interesting. I don't know. I'll look into that and let you know. I'll keep playing this, but that's an interesting thought.
So you're saying
I'm
that you can
unfamiliar
get the
with that.
same kind of nihilistic attitude from reflecting on the fact that just because God has given you this purpose, fulfilling that purpose seems to be just fulfilling God's purpose that He set for you, but that still doesn't have any kind of basis outside of itself. Like, you're just fulfilling God's purpose for you, and so you still have this kind of nihilistic pessimism in the sense that you're just fulfilling a purpose that means nothing outside of the circle of God to man.
Right. So we're saying we made it up, right? They're saying God made it up. At some point, somebody made it up. Isn't it more isn't it more fulfilling if we made it up?
I suppose.
Like,
I mean, the religious answer to that is to say that, well, God being the creator of all, he is the grounding of all being, and so when purpose comes from Him, it is an objective purpose in the basis of the universe. It's not made up in the same sense, because He is also the author of us. And so if we come up with a purpose, then He's come up with us and we've come up with the purpose. So whatever purpose that we've come up with, it may have come from us, but ultimately it came from God. And so we're better off listening to what God's purpose is, to kind of cut out the middleman and make sure we're getting it right.
Quality at unbeatable prices? Yes, chef.
Horse duvers?
It's an Aldi thing.
Sorry.
We believe education should hold practical value.
2 ads in a row.
But what does that
Crazy.
mean? Well, at university.
All right, there we go.
I mean, but I think you could still sell there's a lot of poetry and the beauty if in us being the writers of our own destiny, right? Like, I think you could sell that as as something beautiful. It's not impossible, right? And again, I think the idea that we are living on a rock in a universe that doesn't give a shit if we're there or not there, the fact that we managed to create things that we care for and we have become so successful at it, and we're getting better and better at it, I think that's a beautiful story right there. I mean, seems like we have gone against all odds, and we have defeated, we made this rock into a source of care, a source of love, a source of friendship, a source of this is the fact that we, out of things that don't matter, we have created things that matter to us. I think there's poetry there, there's beauty there that we could promote.
Right, and we've done it against all odds and against all gods, right?
Yeah, good.
I think I want to. I mean, this has been a great detour. I mean, it's really good to get to the heart of what your view on seeing enlightenment values and atheistic values, or possible atheistic values, as a positive, affirmative thing. It's an interesting way to look at the world. But I want to make a complete segue now and move on to another topic which I wanted to talk to you about, which is again related to the free speech. I mean, we mentioned the Charwell article, but that kind of pales in comparison to what happened, I think, the other day at Calgary, which I know you've been talking a lot. I mean, that's been really making the rounds. That's got a lot of attention. I've seen you on quite a few podcasts and radio stations. Maybe you could just give listeners to this podcast a brief overview of what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to go speak at Montreal University, and they decided that, given the shooting that just happened in New Zealand, this guy is going to come here and talk about Islam, and maybe don't talk. Maybe that's not a good idea. So they deplatformed my speech, which is really backfired again. More people end up seeing what I have to say than if they didn't. Again, it's a great thing that these things backfire. I mean, the people should stop trying to do this. Every time you do it, you're just making it much bigger. I mean, I'm glad that that it happened, because now, I mean, again, I also mentioned this at the radio, because after they platformed me, first of all, we had an event somewhere else, not in the university, but a lot of people were so
I just realized I saw. Thank you, Riley. Oh my goodness. Anytime that happens, Riley, you got me. Thank you. Basically what I was saying is I didn't find any article specifically talking about like anything recently about kosher, but this article here does talk about how that kind of notion is a myth. Is kosher food blessed by a rabbi? Blessing food does not make it kosher, nor is food that has not been blessed necessarily unkosher. So the blessing, it seems to be kind of an add-on to the process, doesn't necessarily add anything to the process. But what this article says is that it's a way of sort of thanking God. So it says meat in particular requires special handling. Meat is only kosher if it comes from a permitted species, such as chicken or beef, but not pork. If the blood has been completely drained from it, and if it has been butchered in accordance with the laws of Jewish slaughter. So we see a lot of that in Leviticus, where it talks about different animals and the hooves and the gap between their hooves or not. The specific types of animals kind of diverge from that, whether they chew cud. Those are the kind of specifications that they had written out in Leviticus. And then there's extra biblical mentions of it as well. However, many Jewish offer a blessing before eating food and afterward too. Food blessings are meant to thank God for the food, but do not affect that kosher status of the food itself. There is no blessing that must be said to make food kosher, nor can any blessing convert a previously unkosher food into that which is kosher. So, yeah, I mean, this is just one article, so take that with a grain of salt. It is from My Jewish Learning, so it is from, a actual Jewish site. So, I don't know if there's much debate on that. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I would assume that is probably not the case. It seems to be pretty strict when it comes to kosher, at least. I mean, Jews are pretty, compared to like Christians and Muslims, Jews are actually very open to kind of changing their theology and their perspective and being kind of a little bit more kind of fluid in their understanding of things. So if there was to be kind of an Abrahamic religion to do something like that, it would probably be Judaism. But I don't know. I haven't seen anything. That makes sense. I'm pretty sure the source I saw was super biased and anti-Semitic. Okay. Yeah. There probably is something out there. It kind of reminds me of what was that guy? John Crist. Do you guys know who John Crist is? The comedian. He has this whole bit on pre-blessed food, which is pretty funny. But anyway, good question. Good question.
Upset about the fact that the university is not having having this speech at their campus. That we started getting calls from newspapers, TV shows, and radio channels, and they wanted to talk to us about it, right? So it got a lot more attention. But the interesting thing about this is that a lot of these people. So there were a lot of people that also like, hey, we had in New Zealand, we had a shooting, 52 Muslims died. Like, this was the right decision by the university. Why are you going out and shitting on Islam right after a lot of Muslims were killed in an act of terror? And I have a lot to say to that. I don't know how much time we have, because there's a lot I could say.
We have got as much time as you want, as much time as you have.
Atlas. You dream about moments like this. My goodness. The fastest female track.
Okay, so first of all, I don't really think this has anything to do with protecting the people that even before this whole deplatforming happened at the university. I saw some tweets, people actually blaming me for the shooting.
My God.
Yeah, they had screenshots of some of my tweets against Islam, saying like these are the kind of narrative that actually promotes hatred towards Muslims.
How does that make you feel? Like, does that enrage or upset you, or are you just so stupefied by it that you can just completely ignore it because you know how ridiculous it is? Or does that? Because I don't know how I would feel to have my name attached to this outrageous act of terrorism. I mean, I can't imagine for someone like yourself what that must be like, but are you able to just kind of just effectively ignore it?
Well, I mean, what I tried to do is, like, instead of criticizing them, I kind of wanted to admit that we do the same thing to other people, and not we as in not me, but within our community. And instead of like my first reaction was, instead of pointing the finger at them, to look in our like point the finger at our own community, and say, like, listen, we have this problem as well, but in the people that consider themselves as our allies, right? So they say, for example, my anti-Islam narrative helps with attacking Muslims and stuff, but there are people that we consider allies and friends, that whenever there's an Islamic terror attack, they say, like, they say general things about all Muslims, right? And they point to Muslims, for example, a lot of for being responsible for the Islamic terror attack. So I decided to call that out, right?
Right.
Which is a very similar thing.
And
Imagine,
to be clear, there, are you talking about the disparity between, for instance, if there's a right-wing terrorist who goes and shoots up a bunch of left-wingers or a bunch of Muslims or something like that, then there's an immediate call for people to be aware of right-wing extremism and the dangers of being right-wing. But when there's an Islamic terror attack, it's immediately the kind of opposite message of, well, let's not blame Islam for this. Let's make sure that we separate the ideology.
Well, no, there is that, but there's also some people that start blaming Muslims as well. I mean, I think that's unfair to a lot of Muslims, right? Like, if you go out and, say, like, I mean, imagine if you told an imam, imagine if you did this to the university, what they did to me, if they did that to an imam. I mean, they don't do that, but imagine if they did that. Like, imagine if there was an Islamic terror attack and there was an imam planning to speak at the university, and they were like, you know what, let's not have somebody talk about Islam right now. Maybe this is not the right time. I mean, universities wouldn't do that, and if they did that, that would be ridiculous. But there are some people within our community that do think that they think, like, you Muslims are responsible for this Islamic terror attack. I mean, no, I mean, they're not. I mean, they're wrong about their views. I mean, they believe in Islam, and that's nonsense. But you don't go point the finger at every freaking Muslim out there for an Islamic terror attack. Okay, so I mean, it doesn't.
Yes, that's exactly kind of what I was getting at earlier, which is, too often do we blame the people in the religion and not necessarily just the specific ideas that are, not good ideas, not healthy or good for society ideas that are propagated in the religion. So yeah, no, that 100%, I agree with that. Too often we kind of conflate them when they're two different types of people. And there's versions of Islam from people that I know that practice it in ways that I think are really healthy and really good. And I'm not going to tell them to, get rid of their faith. Like, no, it brings a lot of joy and happiness and, benefit to their life. And so if that's you, like, I'll go for it. Like, I love that. I think that's great. It's good for you. And, so that's kind of what I'm about. I'm about, searching for the truth, right? Finding, like, what is true, and traditions, and, like, what are the traditions that benefit you, that help you, and that you kind of aspire toward. That's why it's called truth and tradition. Like, both are very important, and I think are good things to consider. So, yeah, I mean, the people are not necessarily the religion. Should we defend these, specific parts of the Quran, which are not great? I mean, I'm someone who is pretty ignorant about the Quran, so it's not something I really want to speak about too much, because I don't know the context of these verses. But from what I know, from what I've seen, I would say it's probably not something we want to propagate, but maybe they're reading it out of context. I don't know. This guy seems to know a lot more than me, and so I would be more apt to accept what he has to say, but I don't know. It's something I have to research more for myself.
Some people might think, well, that doesn't happen, but it does happen. There are people within our community that do that try to point the finger at every Muslim. So if we think it's unfair for people to,
So in the chat, I love this question. This is a really good question. Judge a religion by their book/teachings, not by the people of the religion. What do I think about that? So there's a few things. I think that question is very targeted toward westernized religion and not toward religion as an entity. I think religion and like the discussion of like what is religion is actually really interesting, because you could probably think of religion in terms of like how we think about sports or how we think about musicians. There's certain aspects of these, secular, what we would call secular things that are very religious. Like there's a lot of tradition, there's a lot of ritual, there's, devotion, there's, praising those who we admire in these kind of practices. And in a sense, I think it hits on a lot of the religious ideas that we have in other faiths, more of the institutionalized religion. So when you ask that question, I don't really think too much about, I think it misses the point that religion's more than a book and more than just theology or ideas. Religion is a much bigger and broader thing. And so, yes, there can be ideas, and yes, there can be books that are and ideas in said books that are problematic. And are the people representative, the people who practice those religions, representative of those things? Not all of them are. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And so in a sense, I would say that we need to look at religion in a bigger sense. This is something that I've realized since kind of leaving Christianity, is that religion's much bigger than just the question of like, what do you believe, or what does your holy book say? Sometimes a lot of Hindus, they're not very familiar with the Vedas. They haven't really studied them a ton. It's more just kind of what they've heard. Some of the stories are orally kind of passed on. There's a lot of influence from religions that came before it, because the Vedas, this is according to secular scholarship, the Vedas aren't actually Hindu. Hinduism adapted Vedic ideas and the Vedic texts, but it's actually not true to the original version and expression of Hinduism. Now, if you talk to a Hindu, they're going to disagree. They're going to say, no, these were true to the original Hindu belief. But scholars, from what they've seen, it's not actually like true to the original religion, the original faith and the practice that preceded, that came before Hinduism. And so there's that to kind of consider as well. So when it comes to that kind of question, I would say we can reject some ideas in religion that we find problematic, and we don't have to judge those who hold to that faith, especially if they don't even hold to those specific ideas in that religion, right? And then on top of that, religion's a lot more than just theology and books. So agreed. I prefer the general Eastern approach, where they don't generally separate teaching and practice, or it should be said orthodoxy and orthopraxy. Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. So I very much so agree with you. I think, and as I've kind of looked at Eastern traditions, I find it kind of relieving. Like, it's not like so focused on exclusivity and being right. And it's more just kind of focused on like, dude, like if this kind of works for you, this seems to bring peace to your life, like that's great. And I think that is the type of thing that religion does super well. And that's the type of thing that I want to propagate personally. I don't really care too much. Like, I think truth is very important. It's part of what this channel is about, digging in, finding what is true. But at the same time, I don't want people to be existential nihilists. I don't want people to, have sort of mental health crises all the time because they're being told that the world, and we don't even know for sure. Nihilism is really an acceptance that we don't know. It's not an acceptance that there is nothing, a purpose, but it's that we don't know if there is ultimate purpose. It's a sign of agnosticism, not a sign of confidence. And so even with nihilism, like I think it is something that we should probably push people toward things that are good and beneficial for their life rather than things that are going to be destructive for themselves. We can talk about it in a truth sense and have really good conversations, learn and grow. But at the end of the day, I'm not against any faith. I think actually faith is a beautiful thing. It's impacted me and benefited me in great ways. So I love that sentiment. You worded it really well. So I love it.
Point the finger at us, critics of Islam, when there's an attack like this on Muslims. Well, we should also make sure that we point the finger at the people that we should also like blame, criticize the people that point the finger at all Muslims when there's an Islamic terror attack, right? So both should be called out. But again, I just want to say one thing that is interesting is that there's this attack in New Zealand got a lot of attention, and deservedly so. It should get all the attention it could get. This is horrific, and it should be called out. It should be studied. It should be analyzed and see how we could prevent more crimes like this. All right. And the problem is though that many of the people that are calling this out, I suspect that it's not really because they care for Muslims, but because, and I know that's a huge accusation, but this is the reason why I think that it's because we have been trying to bring attention. We, as an atheist organization, as an anti-Islam, anti-religion atheist organization, we have been talking forever about the war against Muslims in Yemen. All the Muslims that are being killed, the thousands of Muslims that are being killed, the millions of children that are being put to starvation on purpose. Starvation is being used as a weapon against the children in Yemen on purpose by Saudi Arabia with the backing of United States and Canada and other European countries knowingly. Okay, and Iran is also responsible. We haven't had much success with that, even within our own community. Like that many people didn't care. Outside, inside, this doesn't get much attention. We also have been trying to bring attention to the way China treats Muslims. I mean, we have around 1 million people in concentration camps in Muslims, 1 million Muslims in concentration camps in China for the crime of being Muslim. And we have ever since we heard about this, like a couple, around a year ago, I think, we have been trying to talk about this and bring attention to this as much as possible. And just to point a finger again at our own community, we have noticed a lot of people say like, well, that's a good thing. It's against Islam. Like, no, it's not against Islam, you idiots. This is against Muslims. This is a human rights violation. This is the closest we've gone to Nazi Germany since World War II. Like, we have never gotten this close to what it was like. We have, like, why is the whole world not 1 million? Like, even in Muslims are still more obsessed with what Israel does to Muslims than China. And even though China is doing what to Muslims astronomically higher than anybody, like nobody is oppressing Muslims more than China is, what China is doing right now.
But why? Why don't they care as much? What's going on there?
Because it doesn't serve anyone's narrative. Again, this is what I'm saying. I don't think the people. So if you look at the Muslim community and the regressive left, right? So the Muslim community, they traditional enemies are United States and Israel, especially Israel, right? So if Israel kills, let's say 2 Palestinians, that helps your narrative because you have defined your enemy, you have defined your identity as opposition to a certain enemy, right? So those 2 Muslims matter more all of a sudden than 1 million other Muslims, right? And if it comes to the regressive left, they have defined their entire identity based on opposition to white supremacists, right? So if it has this one, the New Zealand one becomes the story that they want to bring attention to because the guy that did this was a white supremacist. It doesn't matter, they don't care about Muslims, because if they cared about Muslims, they would be speaking about what China is doing to Muslims or what United States and Saudi Arabia is doing to Muslims. They care about white supremacy being a big thing. They want white supremacy to be bigger than it is. They want more Muslim blood. They want Muslims to be discriminated against. And this is why I warn Muslims, right? I tell them that, these people, they are not your allies. They want to be your guardians. They act like they're your guardians. They're not. Their industry depends on more of you being killed and oppressed and wronged. So be careful in making people that depend on you being wronged. Be careful in giving them more platform. Be careful in making them your allies, because they're not going to be helpful to you. Their entire career depends on more of you being wrong. So the measures that they would take will actually end up, So a lot of Muslims actually are starting to get this, right? I tell Muslims, like, we might not look like your allies because we say offensive things about your religion and your views and about Muhammad and Quran, and it seems like we are against you. But I tell them, like, it's better to be offended than to be discriminated against, right? Because we shit on your religion all the time. We will challenge your ideas all the time, but we also challenge the people that want to take away your rights. We stand with you, but we are the people that are treating you like adults, because we are treating you like you can take opposition to your ideas, right? Because we don't think that's a big deal to speak against your ideas. We think it's a big deal if somebody wants to oppress you and hurt you. We think that's a big deal. So we are the regressive left. They're treating you like children. They're treating you like people that can't take any kind of critique of your views, right? And you are being oppressed in many places in the world, and they're trying to pretend like just saying mean words against your ideas is the same as that. Like how insulting you should find that insulting.
But is it not possible that, so I mean, there are these people who you're suggesting that these people are actively kind of, then they're really not helping Muslims. But is it possible that they are genuinely just mistaken, that they do care and they do really want to see the elimination of anti-Muslim bigotry, but have just been misguided by the popular narrative? Because maybe the people who are instilling the narrative really do believe the things that you're saying that they do, but the average person, I think, is more likely to be someone who thinks that what they're doing is helping, but it's not. Maybe they're not aware of the situation in Yemen. Maybe they're not aware of the situation in China. And if they were aware, then they would care. I mean, do you think that that's not possible?
Then why is it that when we bring this to their attention, they still don't talk about it? I
mean, that could also be because of the fact that they have been indoctrinated into thinking that the most important issues facing Muslims are people like yourself or people like me, and that's not necessarily their fault, but that doesn't mean that they want more anti-Muslim bigotry. It perhaps just means that they're mistaken about where it's actually coming from.
I'm curious as to who they are. Like who are you talking about? I think that I don't know. I'm curious. He probably is thinking about a specific situation. So I'm like, who are you talking about? Who are these people that are kind of making the narrative so that Muslims are always the victim without ever addressing the fact that they're actually the victim, and we can maybe stop these specific victimhood scenarios and only focus on the ones that actually don't matter as much. I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about specifically. So that's my main thought.
I'm not blaming them only for this. I think this is part of, again, like we said, it's part of human nature. We have, again, just like atheist activists might want a religion to be the greatest evil, right? I'm not specifically trying to say that this is only them that have this problem. Everybody there will always be people within a community that will want. It's again like a firefighter that is hoping for fire. Every community that is fighting against a certain disease will have that element in it. and actually this is actually, I think there was a study done that showed that actually some firefighters are hoping that it's fires, which is, I mean, it's inevitable. It will happen. I get, but you're right. I mean, there should be there's probably both, right? I'm not trying to say all of them are waiting for the next, white supremacists to do something to kill Muslims. But I'm sure there are some people that just don't know any better. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's also people in there that are just like see that as an opportunity. And just to be fair, I can say that about our community as well. I'm pretty sure there are anti-Islam critics within us that see it Islamic terror attack as an opportunity. Like they're like these, I try to like tell them like maybe you're not noticing it, but try to look within you. Like be very careful. See how you're feeling when you see the next ISIS terror attack. Are you happy a little bit that now are you jumping on Twitter
right
to talk about Islam? How evil Islam, like just be careful. Be careful. Or if you notice just a little bit of like this is a great opportunity, just go reevaluate how you think about what your purpose is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I think that's great advice for people within our community and without it, to always be kind of aware of the true nature of your feelings towards an event.
Yeah.
It's something, I mean, I imagine that you're somebody who really can, if there's somebody who can sympathize with the plight of Muslims, it would be someone like you, because you were a Muslim until your teenage years, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that's really needed to care for Muslims, to care for your fellow human beings. I mean, I'm also a gay rights activist. I'm not gay, right? So. I mean, animal rights activists, and by animal, we mean non-human animals.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to be non-human to be able to care for animals, right? So I think, I think we all have the capacity to feel sympathy for each other without actually having to be the people that we feel sympathy for.
But I mean,
yeah.
I just want to say I love this guy. This guy's awesome. He's so like, just so kind of a breath of fresh air. I feel just too often that we as human beings are kind of pushed into one box or another. And this guy seems very genuine. He just is like, you know what? I don't really care about what the narrative has to say. I care about people. Oh, that's nice. It's really nice to hear. It's great.
But you must have a special kind of sympathy or empathy to people who are living under the doctrine, especially ex-Muslims, for instance, who are living in Muslim countries where they can't let their true beliefs be known. Is that kind of what's driving you to do this, or is it a more separated?
It's the fact that they're conscious and they can feel pain. That's what motivates me, because I don't see that much I don't feel much similarity between me and Muslims in China. In fact, they look very different from anything I experienced from a Muslim community, or the Yemenis, for example. I feel, I mean, there's no experience that I feel like they had, or any life that they had that was even remotely similar to what I had. Even other than the fact that they are Muslim and I used to be Muslim. It's still there's more differences than similarities. And again, this is when Atheist Republic now has an Arabic branch and a Persian branch, in Farsi, and I started doing shows in Farsi for Atheist Republic, and a lot of people, it might seem, because I'm from Iran, a lot of people might think like, and I have some emotional attachments to Iranian atheists. Because it's where I was born and where I was raised. And like, it's not really that, if I could speak Arabic, I would be focusing a lot more on the reason why I started with the Persian branch of Atheist Republic is because I felt like I could be more useful because I speak the language, not because I care for Iranians more than people in other countries, right? In fact, I think I care right now more, even though Iran is suffering from Islam a lot, I care more for people in Yemen right now than people in Iran, because they are being fucked more than anyone else. This is the greatest humanitarian crisis of our time. I really don't feel like I need any sense of belonging to same tribe for me to be able to care for a group of people.
So to anybody who's listening and isn't aware of the situation, can you recommend some kind of source or somewhere they can go to find out what's happening and maybe find some way to help, either by making a donation or whatever they can do?
Yeah, my favorite charity is Save the Children, because I really and if you go to Save the Children Yemen, they also have all the data and all the reason, all the information about what's going on over there, and especially because it's really it's so unfair to the children, and it's just so. I mean, and these kids are going to be, even after this crisis was over, these kids are going to be scarred for life, and they're going to carry this pain forever. So Save the Children is a very reliable charity. I mean, if you want to check if the charity is reliable, not just look at Charity Navigator, right? So they have really good scores there, and I like it because it's really also focusing on the children. So yeah, that's the charity.
Sure
I
thing.
recommend.
I imagine that's something like SaveTheChildren.com will take you there.
Yeah, I think if you Google it, it should be the first.
Okay, so Google that. So people who are...
Yeah, I got it right here. So this is their site, Save the Children. We have been supporting children for over 100 years, and we won't stop now. Save the Children saves lives, and it's cost effective. 84% of every dollar donated goes straight to our mission. Around the world, we provide newborn health services, malnutrition screening and treatment, and help prevent diseases. When disease strikes, Save the Children responds to the unique needs of children to ensure their survival. We have a long-standing partnership with the U.S. government, which includes actively working with several administrations to ensure that children are given the best start in life. Okay. That's super cool. Yeah, definitely. Y'all should check them out. I'll put a link into this in the description when this goes it goes live as non-live, as a rewatch. So that's cool. I think I've heard of them before. I'm pretty sure they look familiar. I think I might have helped with them before. But yeah, SaveTheChildren.org is their website.
We're listening can Google that. If you're watching this on YouTube, then I'll put a link in the description. But if you're listening, then give it a Google search.
Do Save the Children Yemen.
Right. Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we've covered a lot, and I just wanted to. So one question came up on Twitter when I told people that you were going to be on this podcast. One question came up which I did want to ask you, but I think in order to ask you, it requires just a brief overview of your personal story and where you came from. It's up to you how in depth you want to get into it. This is more of a preamble to answering this question as a final question before we leave. So take as much time as you like. But you've got a really quite emotionally strong story. I mean, I've heard you speak about it before, with your recognition of.
Hold up, yeah. So they mentioned Save the Children Yemen. We'll get to that in a moment. So that's this website specifically. It says 11 years of deadly conflict in Yemen has left 11 million children struggling to survive. 80% escalation of conflict embargoes, the collapsed economy have pushed 80% of the population below the poverty line. Wow, that's high. 2.2 million. The ongoing crisis has resulted in widespread malnutrition, with 2.2 million children suffering from acute malnutrition. Save the Children has been working in Yemen since 1963 as one of the largest aid organizations operating in Yemen. Since March 2015, we've reached more than 5 million children in Yemen with life-saving assistance. We support over 200 health facilities across Yemen to deliver vital nutritional services for babies, children, and mothers. That's crazy. So it looks like it escalated in 2014 and 15. When was this last updated? 2025. Yeah. It's up to date. Wow. That's crazy how no one, I feel like I've never heard anything about this, you know? It's a situation that's been going on for 11 years now. That's a long time. 11 years is a long time for nothing. Nothing to really be, at least in the U.S., I should say. It's not really focused on. Crazy. Go check them out. SaveTheChildren.org/Yemen if you want to give to that one specifically. Seems like some pretty cool stuff. Definitely, I mean, do your own research. Look at it. See if it's, something you want to contribute to. I'm pretty sure I've helped out with them before, so I would say that they are reliable. I might be mixing them up with someone else, but I'm pretty sure they're the ones. Anyway.
How damning the doctrines of hell and the afterlife are within Islam, and what it drove you to. I wonder if you could just briefly kind of fill in the viewers about what happened there and the realization you came to as a child.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. So, I mean, ever since I learned about hell, I was like, what the fuck? But anyway, I've been swearing a lot on your shows. That's okay?
That's fine. Well, it's a new show, so I guess it's fine now, right?
Right. So, yeah, ever since I learned about the idea of there's a place that we're going to be tortured as a kid, I was like, I was really terrified about ending up there, and I was, I remember crying about it. And my aunt one time, my aunt used to live with us, and she wanted to know what I'm crying about, and when she found out, she told me, like, listen, Armin, most people are not going to go to hell. It's just for the worst people. It's for the murderers, rapists. You're going to be fine. But then when I went to school, we learned that actually most people are going to end up there.
And that's not even just most non-Muslims, is it? That's
most Muslims are going to go there
Muslims as well.
Yeah, they don't.
Most people throughout time, anything prior to Islam, anything prior to Abraham. Yeah. That's kind of one of the critiques you hear about a lot of the Abrahamic religions, the exclusivist religions, is that, prior to Abraham, prior to the texts, there's no mention of Yahweh or any of these sort of faiths. So you kind of just have to trust that God somehow revealed himself to these people. It also gets kind of fuzzy when we're talking about subspecies of the human race with Neanderthals, and Denisovans, and prior to that, Homo erectus, like when we look at these other species, it's kind of like, I don't know. To me, it raises some red flags on the notion of it being exclusivist. It doesn't refute the idea at all, but it does raise some red flags, some things that kind of don't add up. And you could probably explain it away by saying, like, God sort of was working, but we just don't have documentation of that. When we look at the historical record, we can clearly see that, Judaism is a product of Canaanite religion, and the other names of God in the Bible are names of Canaanite pantheon. It's a polytheistic world that it stems from that became monotheistic, most likely after the exile to Babylon. And so when we have to wrestle with historical record, when we have to wrestle with archaeological record, and it's just not really adding up to make the exclusivist claim of Christianity true, and I guess with Islam as well, I think we have to have a conversation. And there are Christians that I think deal with that fairly well, recognizing the difficulty of the issue. I don't think it's something that, at least from what I've seen, has been really satisfactorily answered. But yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I wrestled with as a Christian when I was doubting. And it's still something that I'm like, I haven't really seen a great answer to that question, mostly just kind of deflecting from the connotations of it all, or rejecting it, which to me seems not in the spirit of truth seeking. when you have to reject something for dogma, that seems problematic to me. So yeah, it's definitely going to cause a lot of cognitive dissonance, I think, in any sort of person holding these faiths.
I guess the only thing about Muslims is that after thousands of years of paying for their sins in hell, then eventually they're going to go to heaven. But the non-Muslims will to just stay in hell. But still, thousands of years of burning didn't seem like something to look forward to. I actually remember lighting a match and putting it on my arm just to see how much it hurts,
wow.
and then it was really bad, and didn't try to imagine it all over my body, and then I tried to imagine that for like 5 minutes, and then for 10 minutes, and then for hours, and then for 1 year, and then for thousands of years. I was like, yeah, fuck. There's no way I could. There needs to be a way out of this, right?
Yeah.
And your reaction earlier, just a second ago, I think was accurate, and I think it could have done with swearing, because when you hear about certain pains or punishments, when you hear about like ancient torture methods or whatever, your reaction is kind of like, oh, that sounds bad. Oh, that's painful. But when you hear about eternal suffering and burning for thousands of years, it's not just wow, that sounds awful. It is really just, what the fuck? Like who came up with this? This is sadistic.
Yeah.
This is awful. It's not just about the pain. It's about the absolute absurdity of the thing. But
I think it is important to recognize, though, that this came from a period of time when people were a lot more familiar with pain and suffering in that sort of physical sense, not in an existential sense that we have today, but in the sense of like people are physically suffering. And so seeing death, seeing people die to disease, seeing people, be hung or tortured in some way, that's the kind of time period we're looking at. And that's the kind of things that were a little bit more normal, not to say that they were not as bad. They would still be seen as bad, but they were more normalized than they are today. We're not really desensitized to that kind of stuff, and it is something that's a little bit more foreign to us in modern day. Like we don't even see the death of the food that we consume. That'd be wild to someone from antiquity. They'd hear, you've never seen the food that you eat die? And I mean, I think if you do, it's probably going to change who you are and the way you perceive things, and probably even how grateful you are to the animals that you do eat. I don't know. It's definitely something that I've thought about a lot, and I think that's why hell is so dramatic, because death and suffering was a lot more upfront to people at that time. And in addition to that, it was also something that early Christians, in a sense, were familiar with because of persecution. I'm talking more about like 4th century kind of stuff. I think the early on kind of notion of persecution of the Christians, I mean, you can watch my previous live stream on that, is probably a notion that's more mythical. But it did happen, but not to the extent that people say. But there is a very real sort of desire for retribution, and I think that's definitely being expressed in these texts. So there's a sense in which I understand it. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but I think there is a sense in which we can have empathy and understanding of people who are putting out these things. Not endorsing it. We can say, hell no, like that's pretty fucked up. But the fact that they are dealing with shit like that is something that you can recognize. And I think something that helps us understand people better and helps us better understand why these kind of things are propagated and alive in our modern day.
But it is one of the most, the idea of hell is one of the most sadistic things humanity has ever came up with.
Right. And I was reading, Catherine of Siena was a kind of Christian mystic, and she wrote this tract which is revered within the history of Christianity. And at one point, she mentions as a kind of side thought that because one thing I've thought about the concept of heaven and hell is that I don't think I could call it heaven if friends and family members of mine are burning beneath my feet. Like, that wouldn't be very enjoyable to me.
Welcome to the live stream. Jesus is God. So currently, if you're just tuning in, we're watching Alex O'Connor's very first episode, his very first podcast episode, I should say, not his first YouTube video. He'd been doing this for about 2 years at this point, talking about the Enlightenment, hell, and leaving Islam. This guy right here is Armin Navabi, and he was sort of canceled by Oxford University because of some of the things that he shared about Islam, specifically about the edict from the Quran to beat your wife. So that was something that he spoke out against, and he said is wrong, and he was canceled, and that article that he posted was taken down. And so that's kind of where we're at. He's sharing his thoughts. He's against a lot of what Islam has to say and a lot of parts of the Quran, but he's not necessarily against the people in Islam. And so that seems to be pretty, I would agree with a lot of what he has to say there. So, but yeah, thanks for tuning in. Let me know if you have any
And she in her
questions.
track says, oh, don't worry. Like, not only will you be okay with the fact that your own children are burning beneath your feet, you'll actually enjoy it because you'll know that they deserve it, and you'll have an idea of God's justice. And it's like, it's one thing to instill this punishment. I don't know what's worse, whether to be kind of instilling fear, whether to be terrified of the fact that you're going to be burning for eternity in hell, or whether to take enjoyment in that fact because the people are going to enjoy it. Because the people are going to deserve it.
That kind of makes me think about like what William Lane Craig has to say sometimes about like faith, specifically divine command type of moral system, where God is the instructor of morality, and anything outside of what God has to say is not moral, right? So God is the perfect moral arbiter. And so anything he says or does is considered moral. People point to the slaughter of the Canaanites in the Bible, and they'll say that, that seems to be genocide and God's allowing it. He's even allowing for the killing of children and babies, right? Well, the thing with that is he says in that scenario, it is actually okay because they were sinning against God. And, we know that they were already causing harm, like sacrificing children to Molech. These are the kinds of things that he points to. And that's why it was okay for God to divinely instruct them to wipe out the Canaanites. And in one sense, I want to say that like he's at least he's consistent. But the problem is it might lead to some weird scenarios. Like, let's say that there's like a public school that's, teaching some things that you might consider to be wrong and leading children astray. Does that mean it'd be okay to, this is going to be pretty gruesome, so warning, to go and shoot up the school and say, like, we need to eradicate the teachers and the staff, and you know what, the children that are being affected by that, we should kill them too? No, no, that is not okay. But what if God told you to do it? Does that make it then okay? And that becomes a problem with divine command. Intuitively, we are convinced of divine command because we look at our moral intuitions, we say, oh, it seems to be right. But then when we use intuition to critique divine command, intuition no longer matters. And that's the real problem philosophically, is that divine command theory of morality, I think, is problematic at its core. And if you're a Christian, you don't have to hold to divine command. And I think that's probably a better, more consistent way. Now, it comes with other problems, like, okay, does morality then dictate God? That seems to be also, in a sense, problematic. I think the best response is that aspect, that part of the Bible, is actually just incorrect. That's where there is error in the Bible, and there's a misunderstanding of God in these passages when we're talking about, I believe it's in 1 Samuel, and then also in the book of Joshua as well. So that, I think, is probably the best response. But divine command theory, I think, especially when you hold to a fundamentalist view of the Bible, can be pretty detrimental. Olashea, welcome, bro. Thanks for sharing the background of the guest. I had been listening for half an hour since I woke up. Yes, you're very welcome. Sorry if you just woke up and heard me talking about divine command theory of morality. It can be kind of a brutal topic sometimes, but yeah, I appreciate the comment. So now he's coming from a really interesting spot, and I definitely appreciate the honesty and the authenticity behind this guy. I disagree with some of the things he says, but I think most of what he has to say, I would very much so agree. I really like his approach. He seems very authentic, and he seems to just care about humans, which I think is something we can all agree upon. Like, let's love people. Most of us, at least. Most of us.
It just seems absolutely absurd to me. But okay, so
yeah, and another thing is that even if after 1,000 years of burning, if you go to heaven, I don't know how you could enjoy. I think by that time you're extremely traumatized. Like,
right,
I just recently imagine, like, imagine after thousands of years of burning, you're in heaven, in an Islamic heaven, and then now you have like angels wanting to have sex with you, and you're just like going back and forth, like, just go away, don't talk to me. like somebody touches.
I could just see it. Like I've been burning for the past 3,000 years in hell, and then finally God kind of opens the gates and says, "Hi, Alex, how are you doing? Welcome back." I'd be like, "Fuck you! Who the hell do you think you are, trying to open your arms, letting me into you? I want to go back. Screw that. I'm not going anywhere near you, monster." Oh yeah. Man, but okay.
I mean, this does come with a more literal kind of understanding. I don't. Again, I want to say I'm not too familiar with the Quran, but according to what the Bible says, like, you don't have to also hold to the idea of hell being a place of fire. You can just say that that's sort of allegory. That's not like a literal way of understanding what hell is as a place. So if you are sort of a universalist and you hold to hell being temporary and being a refining place, for you to be prepared for heaven, like in the scenario they're kind of proposing, I would maybe say that the idea of burning for eternity is pretty intense, but maybe that's not the actual like legit interpretation. Maybe it's more of this idea of it's kind of like this, that this is sort of evoking a notion of suffering that we can understand from a materialistic kind of worldview here on Earth. But it's not like literally burning in a lake of fire. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say exactly what the right interpretation is. But if you are a Christian and you just trust God, I think you can probably just trust that it's probably going to be something that aligns with human love and intuition, like the intuitive understanding of morality. Which is why I don't tend to use this kind of line of reasoning to argue against faith, because there's ways to argue and understand it in a legitimate way that is not straightforward, fundamental understanding of what the Bible has to say. But I would agree, it is an absurd kind of notion, and I think it is, if you are a fundamentalist, in terms of the way that you understand religious texts, this should make you think. It should cause you to think. And anyone who, I've been in circles where people say this kind of stuff. They're like, no, they deserve it. Like, no, they're going to just constantly be sinning and sinning and sinning. And that's why it's eternity, that kind of stuff. It's not helpful. It doesn't actually give real answers. It just serves to defend dogma, which we don't even know is fully true because it's only true based upon the interpretation that we've been given. So, yeah, no, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot to consider.
Okay, so you were terrified of this concept of hell,
right?
But there's a kind of get out clause with all of this, isn't there?
Well, I mean, I thought there was, because so here's the thing, and again, this was my. This is what we were told in school, because every time I say this, a lot of Sunnis jump on this. They're like, "This is not Islam, Armin. What are you talking about?" Like, okay, fine. This is what I would learn in school in Iran. This is what they told us. I know yours is a little bit different, but it's fairly similar. So what we learn in school is that, in Islam there is no sinning unless you hit before the age of reason. And this is again a little bit different from Christianity, because in Christianity you're born with sin. In Islam, what you learn is that you can't be responsible for your actions until you hit a certain age, because you don't have no idea what the hell you're doing, right? So before the age of reason, you have no. So there are two angels on your shoulders. One of them is like writing all your good deeds. The other one is writing all your sins, right? But they're not writing, and at the day of judgment, they will have their records to see how good you were. But they're not writing anything. Their sheet is completely white clean until you hit the age of reason, right? And for boys, that age is 15, and for girls, that age is 9. So that means that nothing I do or say or
I love how it's different by gender. That's crazy. Oh my God. That's crazy. So I didn't know that. Did you guys know that? The age of, not the age of reason, but the idea of the angel and on your two shoulders kind of giving an account of all the right, good things that you do and all the bad things you do. That's from Islam. I didn't know that. I mean, that's the classic thing that you see in like cartoons and stuff, but I always thought it was like an interesting interpretation of Christianity. But wow, I'll have to look into that. That's Islam? That's so fascinating. Did you guys know that? I don't know. Like that's such a pop culture thing. That's so cool. Fascinating. Wow.
Think counts as a boy before age 15. Suicide is a sin in Islam. But again, there's no sinning before age 15. So I just put 2 and 2 together. I was like, okay, so wait a minute. If I die...
Yeah, so as long as you commit suicide prior to the age of 15, you're fine. Right? Just live until you're 15 and then you're good. I'm not condoning anything. No. I'm not condoning anything. This is purely hypothetical.
Pure and without sin, there's only one place I could end up in, and that's heaven. Suicide is a sin. If somebody commits suicide in Islam, you go to hell. But what if I commit suicide before I hit age 15? That can be a sin, because there is no sinning before age 15. So I could just kill myself before age 15, and I will go to heaven. And I was thinking, like, why are not people doing this? This seems like a loophole in the system. This seemed like a get out of jail free card. And I'm like, I cracked the code. I could just do this and go to heaven. And I wanted to
get your 32 virgins. Come on now.
Make sure that I got this right. So I actually asked our Islamic teacher in school, why wouldn't I just kill myself and go make sure that I don't go to hell? And he said, you shouldn't do that, because if somebody kills them, if you go to heaven because you died as a child, you didn't get an opportunity to be tested, you just go to the lowest part of heaven. Apparently, like, heaven has like many different layers, and the best part is for martyrs, and that's where Muhammad is. But so you go to the shittiest part of heaven. The martyr part is like VIP, and then you have other layers, and you go to the part that is not that impressive. It's still really good, but not if you earn heaven by being a good Muslim, then you could go to the better parts of heaven. And I thought, like, who gives a fuck which part of heaven I go to? I just don't want to burn. Right. I just want I'll take a parking lot for eternity as long as I make sure that I don't get burned for any amount of time. So
I could grab a beer with this guy. I love this guy. Oh, that's great. No, the thing that I find so like that's so similar to like Mormonism and their understanding of like heaven as well. There's okay, let me see if I get this right. There's the terrestrial realm, which is sort of the third realm of heaven. Basically, if you don't believe and you aren't really that good of a person, you're going to go to the terrestrial realm. It's still heaven. This is according to the Mormons that I know. Then there's the telestial realm, which is the like second degree of heaven. And there is going to be the Christians, the Muslims, the people who practice religion and followed some sort of guiding worldview, but were not followers of the Latter-day Saints, the second teachings, the second New Testament of the Bible. Then you have the celestial realm, and that's reserved for the people who are Mormon and the people who actually followed the teachings from the tablets of Moroni. And so you have those kind of three different aspects of heaven, and within the celestial realm, there's even three more aspects of heaven. But basically, from the people that I was speaking with, none of them go to what would be considered hell. The place that is hell is this outer darkness, and that's really only reserved for like the devil, his angels, and some of the worst people in human history. Like maybe you could make an argument that Hitler went to the outer darkness, but even then, it's like maybe. So that's like, my question to them was like, okay, well, why wouldn't you just not care and then just live your life here on Earth, and then you at least should go to heaven. You live a life that's probably similar to this life here. And they say, well, that would just leave you with eternal regret that like you could have actually made it to a better degree, a better reward, but you didn't live a life that was, according to them, like holy enough. And so because of that, that's why you don't go to the other degrees of heaven. You just go to the lowest degree of heaven. And I don't know. I maybe it's because I didn't grow up Mormon, but to me, I was like, that seems kind of ridiculous. Like burning fire seems a little bit more persuasive to me. But I don't know. It's definitely it's a different way of thinking about it, and I think that's just the practice of Mormonism that I was interacting with. I think there are Mormons who say, there's a lot more people actually going to out of darkness than we will. Than what they were telling me. So that differs by interpretation, but yeah, it's a very similar idea as what he's saying here.
Like, okay, this seems pretty, the logic seems pretty solid. So I jumped out of the window in my school. I broke both my legs. I broke my arm. I fractured my back. I was in a wheelchair and my bed for around 7 months. I missed 1 year of school. And the only reason why I didn't try it again was because what I saw it did to my parents. I saw my dad cry for the first time. I didn't know he was capable of crying. I saw my mom just collapse on the ground when she came to the hospital. And I felt guilty, very guilty about what I did to them. So I didn't try it again. And then when I hit 15 eventually, I was like, shit, there's no way out of this anymore. Like, because now I can't even commit suicide anymore. If I commit suicide, I'll go to hell, directly to hell. So, well, not directly, but then I started, becoming a practicing Muslim because that was the only way now to go to heaven.
Right, and so eventually the faith just kind of slipped away from you, and you began. Did the fear go away of hell because I made a video once called something like "Why I, as an atheist, am still afraid of hell," effectively talking about how I don't believe in it anymore, but that fear that was instilled still existed and kind of permeated my thinking. Was that the same for you, or were you able to kind of leave it all behind?
Yeah, there are many times that I thought, like, let's re-examine everything about religion, because what if I'm wrong? All right, like after I become an atheist, like I was like, there's still. What if there's a hell? Like there's what if I'm wrong about all of this? So let's try. So many times I try to like just wipe clean my entire thought process that made me an atheist, and like maybe I'm being biased. Let's try to start from a position of not knowing anything and then re-examine everything. And what motivated me to keep trying that was my fear of hell. Because the consequences of getting this wrong was so big that I just wanted to make sure that I'm extremely confident about where I am right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason that I wanted my listeners or viewers, perhaps, depending on how they're consuming this, to be aware of your story was because now putting everything together, that is the story of your upbringing and the suicide attempt that it drove you to, and the psychological troubles that it caused, and the deplatforming and being linked and blamed for terror attacks in New Zealand, one of the most despicable things you've ever heard, and to have your name put to that. A question came from Topic Thunder on Twitter, and the question is just simply, where do you get the strength from to do it. I mean, this isn't an easy job. This isn't just sitting around talking about these things. This is being out there, being threatened, being attacked, and being connected to the worst atrocities that humanity can come up with. And you just managed to keep going. I mean, you're here a few days later just on a podcast talking about it like it's nothing. I mean, where does that come from?
I mean, I don't know if it's that big of a deal, because I know there are many other people that are doing what me and you are doing right now, but they're doing it in Iran. They're doing it in Saudi Arabia.
Well, I don't know how much luck they'd have.
Egypt.
I don't know how much luck they'd have out there walking around with a sign saying Allah is gay, which is something that I saw you quite bravely managing. But
right, but it's not really brave compared to what they're doing. I mean, they still have podcasts and YouTube channels. They hide their name. They don't show their faces. But you know, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, in Indonesia, and Malaysia. Okay, just to give you some context, there was this Bangladeshi blogger, and you know, he had. I remember there was this person asking him a question, and he had his friend was chopped to death by some Muslim militants, Islamic militants, and then they asked him if he was scared and that he's going to be next, and he was like, "Yeah, of course I'm afraid." And then they also asked him if he's going to keep blogging about atheism and secularism, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm still going to do it." And people were like, "Well, but aren't you afraid? Why are you going to keep doing it if you're afraid?" And I was like, "But well, no one else is." He's like, "Well, who else is going to do it?" Like, he thought that this is something that it's not getting enough attention, so he's going to keep doing it. And I always feel like, okay, if this guy is going to keep blogging, then there's like zero excuse for the rest of us here in Canada.
Right.
I mean, I live in Canada. It's pretty safe. I don't think I'm taking that much of a risk. This is why I don't like it when people say that, "Oh, Armin, you're brave." I'm like, no, you know how many people we have on the front lines of this that are taking the risk. And also I want to say to people that say that these people in Pakistan, in Egypt, in Bangladesh, Iran, Saudi Arabia, all these other places, they shouldn't be taking a risk. It's not a good idea. I always tell them that, first of all, these people are adults. They know what risk they're taking, and they have decided to take the risk for the sake of the rest of us, right? So I think the only proper response to that is thank you. And I also remind people that every sense of security, any sense of peace, any rights that you have, any sense of freedom that you enjoy today is because there was somebody somewhere at some point that decided to risk their safety, they risk their freedom, give up their rights, give up even their lives sometimes, and that it was those sacrifices that some people at some point decided to make, that now it's because of them that now you're enjoying all these rights, all these peace, all these freedom, and these things were, a lot of people, especially in free countries, they just think like, yeah, of course, freedom of speech, yay, democracy. I have no idea how many people bled for it, and how many people fought for it. It didn't just come. It wasn't just gifted to you. These were things that were taken, and there are people there that continue to fight for these things where we need it the most. So I think the only response to that, to people that are doing it, is to say thank you. And try to, instead of telling them to stop doing it, is to shine a light on them and give them, if you're doing these things in a free country, to use your platform to highlight what they're doing.
But even where we do have liberal values and free speech and the rights that you mention, as hard as they were to establish, they can be incredibly easily gotten rid of. And so that's why I think that people like yourself are just as necessary for different reasons. I think it's perfectly possible to recognize both contributions in different lights. But I love what the people are doing over there, because to me, it just completely shits in the face of the one thing that the Islamic tyrants have against them, which is fear. That's all they can give them. That's all they can say is, we're going to do this to you, because they don't have the ideological grounding. They can't turn around and say, well, actually, to your ideas about atheism, to your criticisms of Islam, here's a really good idea that you're not going to be able to handle. They can't do it. All they have is threats. All they have is violence and fear. And if these people are brave enough to stand up to that, which is the only thing they have, then nothing can stop them. And so I have endless praise and endless thanks for the people out there doing that. But I also have endless praise and endless thanks for people like yourself who are doing what you do. And I think that is a fantastic place to leave the podcast. A lot for people to go and check out. They can check out these YouTubers and podcasters all around the world. They can check out the charities that we've talked about today. Another thing they can check out, which I definitely want to get a mention in before I forget, is you also have a book which people can read. I think you've only got the one book. You haven't got anything else, right? This is the one that I found. So this is for the listeners. It's called "Why There Is No God: Simple Responses to 20 Common Arguments for the Existence of God." It's available on Amazon.
Can I say something about that book? If you're a person that wants that book that doesn't have a credit card or can't afford buying a book, please contact us. We will send you a free PDF copy. And also, this book has been also translated to both Persian and Arabic, which is also available for free.
Well, that is again just cool. more wonderful charitability from you, Armin. That's brilliant. And I'd recommend that people go and get it. It's one of these kind of response style books. So you're not necessarily making a case so much as you're responding to all of the reasons that people might have for believing that there's a God. So if there's anybody out there who needs a bit of convincing, that's something you can read. Armin, where can people find you online if they want to follow you?
Yeah, you could just search for me, or also atheistrepublic.com. I'm also, by the way, a co-host on the main ex-Muslim podcast out there, Secular Jihadist. So you could also check that podcast out. But yeah, I mean, if you just search for me, you should be able to find me.
Great
and
stuff.
Twitter as well.
Yeah, Twitter's where it's at. That's where I was following all of this stuff about the cancellations and the deplatforming.
Can I also say how big of an honor it is to be here? You're a hero of mine as well. I really enjoyed your videos. I can't actually believe that I'm talking to you. So thank you for having me.
The feeling's very much mutual there. This has been great fun. It's been really good to speak to you, honestly. And like I say, this is the first episode of the Cosmic Skeptic podcast. And we are, I don't know when this is going out, but we're actually recording this on Atheist Day, World Atheist Day, which is quite fitting, I think. I saw, because you once, it was fairly recently, because you were just in Israel, right?
Yes.
And I saw a picture of you. I saw a picture of you holding the Atheist Day symbol. Where was it you were holding that?
Well, I held it next to the in three main places. Next to the Wailing Wall, next to the Church of Holy Sepulchre, which is where Jesus was allegedly crucified, and also next to the Dome of the Rock, right next to the rock where Muhammad is allegedly, where he allegedly ascended to heaven from.
That's badass.
And there you were with your Atheist Day symbol. Well, what a day to be recording the podcast. So thanks again for coming on, and I hope that people will go and check out the rest of what you do. You've given a lot of talks about, because we haven't really we've sort of got into why you do what you do and some of the fallout, but we haven't really talked about the actual substantive content of the things you believe. But the reason for that, I think, is because it's all out there and it's available in your book or in the talks that you've given, and I'd recommend that people go and check them out. You're a much needed voice in the community. But yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, Armin Navabi.
Ooh, that was the first podcast episode by Alex O'Connor. So cool. Wow, so much content, so many things to think about. So now we can officially say we have together watched 20 episodes of Alex O'Connor. And on my own, we are at 117 videos. So we're getting there. We're getting pretty close. Honestly, so many things, and especially at the end there, I really appreciated just kind of the personal touch of everything, because, wow, when he talked about his story about, attempted suicide and all of that, like, that is so crazy, like how an ideology like that you can teach to a kid, an ideology like that when you're a kid, probably most kids don't think so deeply about that, and yet he took it to heart, and he followed through the philosophical kind of consequences of his actions and his thought process, and that's where it led him to. So I'm glad that he's still alive. I'm glad that he's still kicking, and he's able to now share his story. So wow, that is so cool. All right, well, now it is time, as always, to lead a unique comment for every single episode. anyone who's maybe just tuning in, I'm watching every single Alex O'Connor video on the internet, and that is no lie. That is no lie. For those of you who have been with me through this journey, you know that to be true. We are 117 episodes in so far, and it's only getting better. It's only getting better. That was the very first podcast episode, and like any episode, like any video, I leave a unique comment on each and every one of them. And I like to get some kind of, I don't know, what's the word? Some, I'm blanking on it. Impact. I can't think of the right word from the other commenters and such, but also from you guys. What stuck out to you in this video? What were some of the things that you were like, whoa, that was really interesting, or that stuck out, that was really cool? So yeah, comment below. Let me know what are those kind of things, and also what kind of comment shall I leave? Should I keep it light, keep it funny, or should I maybe challenge some of the things? Should I just kind of relate to some of the things that were relatable? Let me know. What shall we discuss? All right. This comment says, X Moose here. You and Armin are two of my favorite people I follow and are a source of strength and support to me and many ex-Muslims who are still living in the shadows of their safety. Wow, that's so cool. Also, whenever I get burned out on the topic of religion, you two always bring something new to the table. Great podcast. Very sweet. I love it. I love it. Alex, you've come so far. I've been here since 10K subs. Congrats on your success. Well, now he's almost at 2 million. So super cool. At this point, I think he's at about 200,000, somewhere around that. I have to send some love to my friend, Aaron Foster, for producing the intro music. He has a great podcast too. I've been on it, called the Now What podcast. Worth checking out. Oh, super cool. Yeah, honestly, that music is pretty solid stuff. He kept that for a long time. That was his intro, even in the post Cosmic Skeptic days, when he started doing it, as branding it as Within Reason. That was still part of it. I love the hopeful tone of Armin. Always a pleasure to listen to him. What a delightful human being Armin is. Great podcast. I love how Alex plays devil advocate here. Here's how good ideas and discussions arise. Reminds me of, yes, that's exactly what I was thinking when I heard that. Socratic dialogue. This is something I want to discuss because it's something I'm kind of noticing through this process of watching every Alex O'Connor video, is just how good he is at practicing Socratic method. He really just honestly kind of takes you through the perspective of someone who's like, I want to get what you're saying. I really want to accept what you're saying. I really want to agree with you. But I have this. Just one more thing. Kind of Columbo style. He's leaving the conversation. Oh, yeah, everything we agree. And oh, just one more thing. You know, he's not Columbo style. But I just, it's really fascinating, I think. And it is something that I think is pretty unique. I don't see a lot of it being like happening here. And the other thing, Alex is just, he's not very satisfied with simple answers. And even when people kind of bring something up that a lot of people would be willing to just stop, he doesn't stop. He keeps asking questions, maybe to the annoyance of some people. Sometimes I'll listen to it and I'm like, okay, come on, Alex, this is kind of annoying. Stop being pedantic. But I actually really do appreciate it at the end of the day because it pushes the envelope. It pushes the topic further. And I think it allows for a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation of these topics because there's so much nuance. There's so much to be learned. And when we kind of just are acceptant of an answer or a solution, we miss the wealth of knowledge that is there to be grabbed when we actually are skeptical and think about these things a little bit more critically. But yeah, if you watch the episode, let me know what are your thoughts and on the episode, and I will include that in the comment. Let's look through a few more of these, get some more. That's the word, inspiration. Inspiration. Now I'm inspired. Wow, this is an incredible interview. Armin Navabi. Okay, I want to see some critics. Are there any critics going on? this isn't a critique, but here he says, so the newspaper didn't publish it online because they thought the Quran was offensive to Islam. Totally makes sense. What does this guy say? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say that Islam is more than the Quran. In a sense, I would say it is. It's bigger than the Quran. But in another sense, it's hard to say that because the Quran is so foundational, more than most religions. Like, its holy book, the Quran, is so foundational to the faith itself. So I don't know. Excellent content, excellent presenters. Armin, I was so touched by your child suicide story. Best wishes for all you are doing to make a better world. Super cool. Super cool. Just a couple more of these. Absolutely fantastical. Mwah! I love the 100%. I love and 100% agree with Armin's point of view on purpose. It is a sick intro. Yes, around 42, I had to start looking up Armin Navabi because he is speaking to my philosophy. I have to look him up too. Honestly, I feel like I could grab a beer with this guy. He's really interesting. Really cool. So, yeah, that was kind of some of the comments there. I think the main thing that kind of stuck out to me is some of the notions about like narratives, right? Because so much of the time people are put into boxes, and people, when they're put into a box, there's a benefit. Not just a detriment, but there's also a benefit. And the benefit is that now you have a community, and now you have people that can help kind of get the things you're talking about and the things that you're trying to promote out there to other people, because they're on your side. They're in your corner. But at the same time, you then have to cater to said box. You have to cater to said group. And that can be problematic when it comes to trying to be genuine and authentic in the ideas that you share. And so when he's kind of talking about this, I think it is important to think about how you are sharing things. What is the way that you share things? What is the medium? What are the types of things that you relate to when sharing, right? That's all very important, because people are not going to listen to you if they don't understand you and where you're coming from. But at the same time, if that is causing you to then sort of go against what you actually believe and espouse something that you don't actually believe, then that's when problems arise. So the balance between that, I think, is really important. And the whole idea that, he never specified who they was. He's probably talking about a specific situation, though. But probably the left, a certain sector of the left, is basically defending Islamic ideology, which goes against what they actually espouse as what they believe as leftists, right? And so the pointing out that Islamic ideology is problematic, and this is why, from the Quran, here's the source, that is not problematic. That's searching for a problem, like he said. We're not here to fix non-issues. We're not here to find problems that fit our narrative that we're trying to espouse, but rather we want to find actual problems and solve those actual problems. Man, I loved that part. And I think that is very important. Now more true than ever. Something that we struggle with today. I mean, I brought this up before, but with Charlie Kirk and his assassination, to me, the most tragic thing, beyond the fact that a person was killed, is the fact that as soon as he was killed, the thing that people were talking about online was primarily one of two things. First, some people on the left were saying they were happy about it, or they were just, going straight to critiquing the guy and saying, he had it coming. I understand why he was killed. I don't endorse it, but I understand it. It's kind of that kind of realm. And the other thing was oh man, the left is evil. They keep killing people. This is cause for war. Those are very extreme. And I'm sitting here just kind of like, bro, can we not just mourn the fact that a father died, that someone that a lot of people looked up to died? Like, can't we just mourn that? Can we not just say that that's sad and that we don't want that? And that he stood up for the idea of sharing your ideas, sharing your perspective. I didn't agree with a lot of what he had to say, but I don't really care too much about that. What I care more about is the fact that we have people in our communities that feel the need to go to murder, to go to killing in order to win an argument, or maybe not win an argument. Maybe that's not even what it was, but maybe just defend themselves in some sense. To me, that shows so much just problems with where we're at. And so I think it's a wake-up call. I hope that it's an opportunity for us to learn. I hope. I really don't think that this is the majority of the population, but it's just the people that are the loudest, are the extremists. And so I don't give a fuck about anyone's narrative. If you have a narrative that you want to share, go fuck yourself. Like, I really don't care. What I care about is actual meaning and like helping people and loving people and caring for people. And so if that gets in the way, if you have to find a problem that really isn't a problem in order to solve it, in order to make yourself look better, in order to fulfill some sort of identity, that's a problem. And I don't have time for that. So I went on a bit of a rant there, but that is definitely one thing I really did appreciate from this conversation. So, but yeah, if you have anything, let me know. I'm going to start typing, so it's going to be a bit quiet here. These parts are always so awkward for me, if I'm being honest, because it's kind of like, oh, I'm just kind of typing and trying to focus and put through my thoughts. But yeah. Oh, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I got an idea. Oh boy, I got an idea. All right. Oh, can I even do that? I don't think so. I don't think it's copyright. I don't think it's copyright. Okay. I'm going to play some Jeopardy music while I do my thinking, so you can dance to the tunes instead of awkward silence. I think it's
Immerse yourself in an unparalleled sound quality. No, not the headphones.
Enjoy the sounds. did that in about 3 minutes. Oh, that's pretty good. Not too bad. Not too bad. All right, so what I got is, hey, Alex, this is Jackson for the Truth and Tradition podcast. I am on a mission to watch every one of your videos and leave a comment on each of them. That's my anchor voice for you guys. Thank you for this. I agree with so much of what Armin was saying, and I really appreciate how real he was. It is easy to fall into a tribalistic understanding of ideology rather than take on and discuss your own authentic perspective. So cool. The idea of polarized belief, I think, is very relevant for today. Problems should not serve a narrative, but should be things we seek to solve. So good. Great job with this one. Bang. Bada boom. I'm a full send it. All right. Well, that is episode 8 wrapped up. Good job, everybody. Thank you for keeping in and tuning in. This episode was definitely really cool to see because I think it sort of is the beginning of a lot of what we kind of see in today's sort of in his current channel, podcast kind of style where it's a little bit more about like asking questions and a little bit more about less about debate and about kind of humanitarian issues and more just about, I mean, this is very humanitarian, but more just about like coming to an understanding of what is true and what's actually going on. Make sure to, check out those donation places. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe. This is content I do every single Tuesday night. One conjecture, I should have brought this up at the beginning and I totally forgot. I'm going to start doing this at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time instead of 7:30 as I normally do. So it's going to be Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. That's just because my work, I think, is going to start being a little bit later. And so I don't want to run into the issue again of where I have to work late and have to reschedule the podcast. So now it's going to be at 8 o'clock. And if it gets worse, I might have to change to a different day. But for now, we're gonna stick with 8 o'clock, and hopefully that solves the issue. So. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what stood out to you. What were some of the things that were the most interest to you? And if you've been following this series, what do you think is the coolest thing to see in the progression of Alex O'Connor? Because to me, I think it's really interesting to see just how much more agnostic he's become. He's less confident in the things he says, and he seems to be a lot more of that kind of Socratic personality where he's like, can we know that? Are you sure you know that? And it's really, really cool to see that kind of stuff arising, especially in these kind of conversations here. So podcast number 1 is completed. You can give yourself a star. I give you a gold star. So proud of you guys. And with that, I'm going to wrap things up. We are 117 videos in, and together through the live streams, 20 videos in. I hope you guys enjoyed and have a wonderful night. Bye, guys.